Well, good evening, and we are reconvening our our Lucan Biddulph council meeting for Tuesday, December 15th. We've just come out of a closed session, and staff was given direction on a confidential personnel matter during that session. So as of yesterday, the Lucan Biddulph, the County of Middlesex, the City of London are in the red zone as per provincial guidelines with regards to COVID-19. And to put it quite bluntly, it sucks. You know, tonight is our last meeting before council, and traditionally we would all be together and we'd have Christmas cards that we'd received from people that the community does business with. It would be somewhat of a festive occasion, and we're not. We're having to meet virtually. And, you know, it is getting a little tiresome, and I think that we are all feeling a bit of COVID fatigue. I've heard from a number of our residents and businesses who are concerned on a variety of levels of where we are and how we got here. And I share those concerns, as I'm sure you do. But the reality is we are here. And so we must continue to be vigilant and adhere to the restrictions that are upon us. At this time, I'd like you to consider the mental well-being of our neighbors and our family members. And I've brought this up a number of times over the last 9 months. Family, and I'd like you to think about our neighbors and family members who may be experiencing further isolation and heightened health problems because of how we are being asked to live. Holidays always trigger stresses. And on top of a pandemic, well, we need to look out for each other. So consider calling a neighbor to do a grocery run for them. Or if you're in the drive-thru, pick up an extra coffee for a friend and drop it off. Just pick up the phone and have a chat with someone. There are many community resources to assist those in crisis, and that information can certainly be found quite easily through our website and through community resource websites. If we don't look out for each other, then who will? As I mentioned, this will be the last time that we meet as a council before the holidays, and I want to extend to all of you, council and staff, and our residents, the very best for a blessed and meaningful holiday season. This year, more than ever, whatever and however you celebrate, take the time to celebrate and reflect on all that is important and all you are blessed with to have and to experience. As challenging as this year has been, and in some respect, it's been dark, holidays, both religious and secular, do provide light in the darkness. So from me to you, Merry Christmas and bring on 2021. I think we are all ready for it. So we do have to go into a public meeting for a couple of planning matters. So what I do need is a motion to adjourn as council so that we can sit as the Committee of Adjustment under the Planning Act. So if I can get a mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Ressman and Councillor Regan. And all opposed? And that's carried. So the first application we've got in front of us is a consent application, and it's been submitted by Moray and Joan Watson, and it's with regards to a property on Stonehouse Line. And at this time, I'll hand it over to Dan Fitzgerald. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you, Mayor, and to all the members of the committee. The purpose of tonight's consent application, which is B15/2020, is to sever residents from the farm considered surplus by the applicant. So just so everyone can see, I'm going to put up a location map giving everyone context there. So the lot to be severed would have a proposed frontage of approximately 277 meters along Stonehouse Line, and an area of approximately 4.8 hectares or 11.8 acres. The lot to be retained would have an approximate frontage of 133 meters off Stonehouse line and an area of approximately 36.2 hectares or 89.5 acres. As noted in the report, this application would represent what staff generally refer to as a reverse surplus farmhouse dwelling severance, where the applicant intends to sell both the farmlands and the house separately. Generally, this is completed by qualifying a farmer for committee consideration in advance by way of the applicant demonstrating that the individual purchasing the lands is intended to consolidate the lands into their existing farming operation, and that they own another farm and a dwelling, deeming this house surplus to their needs. So generally, the subject property as a whole is approximately 41.4 hectares or 102.3 acres. It's a farm parcel that's located on the west side of Stonehouse Line, which is south of the intersection at Stonehouse Line and Observatory Drive. It contains 2 areas identified as significant woodlands in the Middlesex National Heritage System study. One being at the back of the agricultural property or the west portion of the lands, and the second being located along the southeastern boundary. The property is also partially regulated along the rear portion of the lands and a small portion along the southeastern boundary. The property also, it contains a geothermal loop within the existing croplands, a house, a septic system and well, a detached barn and accessory building, and a constructed recreational area in the format of 2 golf greens and 2 ponds as well. The retained residential lands would maintain private services and be accessed by Stonehouse Line. The property is an existing agricultural parcel of land and is also surrounded by existing agricultural lands and crop production. The lands are a designated agricultural area in the county official plan. Agricultural and natural areas, in the township's official plan, and are zoned general agricultural A1 in the township comprehensive zoning bylaw. Through circulation of the application, planning did receive comments from the public, which have been included in the report. Comments received from internal departments and agencies have also been included in the planning report, with general concerns noted on the size of the proposed severance, as well as the request to maintain the accessory building on the land. Generally, provincial policy, the county official plan, and local official plan do permit surplus farm dwelling severances, as long as the municipality is satisfied that a farm consolidation is occurring, that the lands are limited in size to accommodate the residential use, sanitary and water services, that the dwelling is habitable and constructed prior to 1999, no new residence is permitted to be established, and that access to the lands be maintained. As identified in the report, staff do express concerns regarding the application on 2 separate items. Staff note that the primary condition of a severance is a demonstration to the committee that a farm consolidation is occurring. The applicant is proposing to delegate this authority to staff through conditions of consent. Staff do have a fundamental concern that the Planning Act does not provide staff with this authority, nor would a decision issued by the committee meet the intent of the policy, as committee needs to be satisfied that the proposal would meet the intent of the PPS, the county official plan, and local official plan. Additionally, staff are of the opinion that the proposed area is considered beyond what would reasonably be considered necessary to support policy criteria, those being that lands necessary to support the residential use and associated sanitary and water services. Given the above, staff are recommending that the application be deferred back to provide an opportunity for the applicant to demonstrate that a farm consolidation is occurring, and to limit the area of the proposed severance to the maximum permissible size in the Lucan Biddulph comprehensive zoning bylaw surplus dwelling zone, which would be 1 hectare. And also that the planner provide a subsequent report for committee and council's consideration at a future meeting date. Thank you, and I'm available for any questions that may come.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Jan. So we do have a process that we're going to go through, and because we have some people that have registered to speak. So what we're going to do is we're going to hear from the applicant, And then after the applicant, I will open up to the committee for questions, and then I will open it up to the public. And I'll go over this again when I come to the public portion. I've got a list of people who have registered, and I will just call upon you if there's something that you want to add at that point. But right now, we can hear from the applicant, Mr. Watson, and he's on there. If you feel comfortable, Mr. Watson, you can turn your camera on. If not, pleased to hear from you now.
I'm not sure how to turn my camera on.
Okay.
I think I'll just proceed.
Okay, great. Thanks very much.
Good evening. I am Murray Watson. Thank you for inviting me to speak to the committee. My oral submission will take about 6 minutes. My wife Joan and I are the owners of 33799 Stonehouse Line and are the applicants for the provisional consent that is before you. Our thanks to the committee for accepting both our application and the additional submissions that we made on December 3rd. I would like to update the record to show that subsequent to December 3rd, we received and accepted a conditional offer for the sale of our property. It is my understanding that the conditional buyer would meet the requirements for being a farmer who would be acquiring the property as part of a farm consolidation. Until at least such time as we have an unconditional agreement for the sale of our property, I will continue to represent and advance our interests in the application for provisional consent. Our December 3rd submissions are detailed and comprehensive. They are intended to assure Council that it has both the authority and the flexibility to give provisional consent to the severance of a 4.8 hectare lot and dwelling that will be considered surplus to a farming operation as a result of a farm consolidation. The submissions are also intended to demonstrate that the provisional consent requested would conform with the official plan, the county plan, and the Planning Act, and would be consistent with the provincial policy statement. The Middlesex County Planner has also made a submission to the committee. He recommends that the committee defer consideration of our application until we demonstrate first that a farm consolidation is occurring, and secondly, until we limit the area of our proposed severance to 1 hectare. We disagree with the planner on both counts. With respect, there is no basis for the committee to defer considering our application. As demonstrated to the planner in my email of November 23rd, our application is complete, since it meets all of the requirements of Section 53 of the Planning Act. While the planner may wish that information beyond that mandated by the Planning Act be included with our application, such information could only be required if the township's official plan authorized the committee to collect that information on its consent application form. The township's official plan does not contain the requisite authority. The planner has not replied to or rebutted the substantive arguments in my email. While the Planning Act gives the committee the latitude to either consider or dismiss an incomplete application, when it receives a complete application, it may either consider it or make a motion for directions to have the local planning appeal tribunal determine if the prescribed information required by the Planning Act has indeed been provided. If the committee takes neither of those courses of action, then we as applicants have the right to make a motion for directions to have the tribunal rule on the completeness of our application. With respect, the planner's contention that we should submit a proposal that is limited to 1 hectare also has no basis in the Planning Act. The Planning Act puts no numerical limit on the size of a surplus dwelling lot, and neither do the provincial policy statement or the Middlesex County Plan. The only numerical limits on surplus dwelling severances is found in the township's own zoning bylaws, which are a creation of council and subject to council's prerogative to give variances in respect of at its discretion. I would note that of the 19 rezonings appended to the township zoning bylaw between 2007 and 2018 that changed agricultural A1 zoned lands to surplus dwelling and A3 zoned lands, 9 of them failed to meet the zoning bylaw minimum size for an A3 lot of 39 hectares, and by substantial margins. The applications that gave rise to those A3 severances could never have made their way to the committee for approval if the planner's approach, that you must only apply for what bylaws permit, was in force. The planner's approach would effectively bar anyone from ever applying for a surplus dwelling severance that exceeds a hectare in size and having the opportunity to argue its merits before the committee. In our case, it would require us to voluntarily apply for a severance that disconnects the dwelling from its heat source and that puts the drainage system that keeps the cellar dry into the hands of the new neighboring farmer. But the Planning Act and the provincial policy statement do not require us to limit our application to 1 hectare or to any size. Those documents allow us to make an application for provisional consent so that we as applicants and the committee can agree on size upfront, subject to conditions. The merits of the proposed 4.8 hectare lot are set out in our application and in the December 3rd submissions. Our arguments for the proposed lot size are well supported by the 2015 Ontario Municipal Board decision in Simcoe County v. Essa Township, which I encourage the committee to read in its entirety, and by 2 local planning appeal tribunal decisions that were also cited in our submissions. Meanwhile, no authorities have been cited against our proposal. It is clear from the 2015 OMB decision that minimizing the size of a surplus dwelling lot is not an end unto itself. The OMB stated in its decision, which allowed a 6.5 hectare, that is 16 acre surplus dwelling lot, that while section 2.3.4.1c of the provincial policy statement seeks to limit lot size, there was no evidence that the section prohibited certain lot sizes, that it prescribed a maximum lot size, or that it should not be open to interpretation. The OMB concluded that the objective of minimizing the size of a surplus dwelling lot is to minimize the amount of prime agricultural land that would be lost due to the severance. And when the amount of productive farmland that would be lost due to a severance would otherwise be minimal, then other interests that motivate the Planning Act and official plans should be weighed in assessing if the size of the surplus dwelling lot is appropriate. The OMB's decision found that the removal of 0.61 hectares from agricultural use would have little impact on the protection of agricultural areas. The OMB concluded that the size of the surplus dwelling lot and the areas to be included should be considered in the context of the land's features, the existing and potential uses, and the capabilities of the lands themselves. In granting provisional consent, the OMB agreed with the Essa Township's manager of planning and development that the consent for 6.5 hectares conformed with the county and township official plans, that flexibility had been exercised in applying the size provisions, and that the proposal protected agricultural land and the rural character of the area. We ask that the committee make the same finding with respect to our application for provisional consent to sever 4.8 hectares. Thank you for the committee's time and attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Watson. Okay, at this time, I will open it up to the committee for questions or comment. Councillor Westman.
Yeah, Mr. Watson makes some very compelling statements and arguments to this. I've been out to the property and had an opportunity to have a good look at it. There are approximately a little in excess of 5 acres of forested lands that were planted under the program with the Ministry of Natural Resources back in the early 90s. They're established Norwegian spruce trees. They're about 35 feet tall. So that is under protection of the municipal or the county natural heritage, and wouldn't hold a lot of value to the average farmer who's looking to plant cash crops. I do have a big concern about the geothermal heating system being moved or agreed upon with an easement agreement. That's either cost prohibitive or puts the rural residential owner in a bit of a pickle for what happens if that agreement is not upheld or whatever. I don't want to leave anybody in a spot where they don't have home heating. The ponds appear to serve a purpose for keeping the basement dry and the property dry, because it's an old farmhouse with a stone and mortar foundation, and the ponds were established at least in part to help manage the stormwater so that the house itself didn't have flooding issues. So there's a few things here at work that leave me kind of concerned. And, as you all know, I've been a verbal outspoken advocate for Mr. Watson here. But I just want to make sure that we're doing the right thing. We do have a history of surplus farm dwelling severances. We do have a history of making provisions for larger portion or parcels, and providing some leeway for unique situations. And I've been on for the entire time that bylaw has existed, and we've had to look at every case as a case-by-case situation, and I do have a problem with outright denying this. I think that we have wiggle room as a council and as a committee to help out here and come to some kind of an agreement that would work for Mr. Watson and the provisional farm purchaser. So that's my 2 cents on the matter.
Thank you very much, Councillor Westman. Councillor Reagan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, I'll just maybe direct the questions or just for clarification from Mr. Fitzgerald. So I just want to understand that the total property size is 102 acres. And we're looking at severing 11 acres is what I'm understanding, approximately 11 from that property. So I'm just kind of confused, as I thought that there was a limit on what they could sever. So what I'm understanding when I'm listening to the presentation, I heard it wrong, but there is no numeric value set, or is that a local? Is that Lucan Biddulph? Or I'm just looking for clarification, because I really was paying attention. I just may have missed that.
Through the chair to Councillor Reagan. So I understand where the applicant is coming from, where he's saying there's no hard numbers in the provincial policy statement, in the county official plan, and the local official plan. I do understand that. However, there's a very clear policy that says only the lands for the residential purpose, sanitary, and water. And the overarching provisions of the Planning Act is to protect agricultural lands at all cost. So when we say that there's no hard numbers, Lucan Biddulph's interpretation of that would be that in the surplus dwelling zone, which is then required to be rezoned on the residential portion of lands, contains the maximum size of the 1 hectare dwelling. So that's what the previous interpretation was of council in Lucan Biddulph. So what I would say is, I understand the perspective that there's no hard number provided in any of the documents, and that's at the end of the day to provide flexibility in certain circumstances that may warrant additional lands. However, in this case, this is prime agricultural land, and it should be protected, and the severance should be limited.
Follow up, Councillor Reagan.
Madam Mayor, thank you very much, Madam Mayor. So if there were other cases in other municipalities, would that stand as a precedent for our municipality? Or is it always going to be case by case?
Through the chair.
To Dan, sorry, Dan.
Yeah, through the chair, I figured that was to me. So, and as committee and council in general are aware, planning decisions are not held to precedent. So your weight of this is based on your interpretation of the provincial policy, the county official plan, and most importantly, your local official plan. So what I would say is, sure, you can have regarding consideration for policies and decisions of other areas. However, your weight is determined on your own policies, not on the policies of others.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, before I go back to you, Councillor Russman, I'll see if anybody else from the committee wants to speak, if that's okay. Deputy Mayor Manders.
Yeah, I know Alex had reached out and we had discussed it briefly, but obviously it's the first time that I've seen our planners report and seen what exactly was being asked. And I'm not interested in denying it. I like the idea of deferring it and working with the applicant to get the goal of severing the house from the farmland. I assume, that's the main goal. I do think what's presented would be very impactful to our policy going forward. The trees are a concern of mine also, but they are at the mercy in the hands of the county and are protected by the county. And whether that's a farmer or whether that's someone that lives in the house, to me, someone in the house could want to have a garden, could want to put a greenhouse there, could want to do something with that land too, and ask for the trees to come down for permission. And if they did, they'd be fined severely, and or the farmer. So trying to accommodate the farm severance and try to getting it to 1 hectare, I think should be the committee's goal with the applicant. But also assuring that the trees to me can be taken care of as they are, being protected, and they would try to reduce this size. The very concerning too on the ponds and the heating. I actually don't mind the idea of a easement. I'd be more concerned on a leased land agreement or something like that could go array or offside. But I mean, I've got an easement out front of my house actually with hydro. I mean, easements are legal and impactful, I feel, and a good tool in the toolbox, again, to try to accommodate this down to what our policy is. I'm also concerned about not having a designated purchaser and when it passes with no designated purchaser that qualifies. I do feel that's the committee's job to ensure that and not up to staff. That should be, we're the ones that have to raise our hands. And at the end of the day, that I believe is the applicant's intent. So that shouldn't be an issue. So those are my comments. I mean, I'm certainly in favor of coming to a resolution to see this happen, but certainly to try to get it to that 1 hectare of land and make it and make this happen. So that's a few comments right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, Councillor Westman.
So as we've been told and had it explained to us by our planner, the intent and purpose of all this is to retain and protect as much arable farmland as possible. So it's a good thing to do. Appreciate that very much. But the wooded lands and the ponds are currently not arable farmland. They're not in use as farmland. And that makes up a big chunk of this application. The area where the home heating geothermal lines are is currently being used as under an agreement with the renter of the farmland to be used as arable farmland, and I'm sure that can continue. And if it doesn't, it's only taking out a very small piece, probably less than an acre of arable farmland from the entire package. So, I mean, the argument that we're trying to retain farmland is kind of moot because we're not. The ponded areas there if a farmer came in and filled in those ponds, it would be very detrimental to the residential part, because then you'd be dealing with drainage issues for the house itself. And the trees are, either way, are going to be protected to some regard under the county. But stewardship is a big issue. And we look at around our community and we see how woodlots are being handled by some of the farmers in our area. And, they tend to get trimmed back and trimmed back and trimmed back. And we are currently in a position as a municipality where we are under treed in comparison to the rest of the province. And we need to be looking at what we can do to preserve as many trees as possible and encourage the planting of more trees. So, I really hope that we can do something to further protect these trees, and also, keep this package as close to the applicant's vision as possible. Just because we're not losing farmland here by severing off these acres, there's no farmland to preserve there. So, I think we need to think about that, because if that's the whole purpose of this, the policy statements and so on, to preserve arable farmland, then that's not an issue in this application as far as I can see. When I look at the picture of the land and have been out to the property, I'm not seeing that we're losing farmland by providing this severance. So again, that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Councillor Westman. Any other questions or comments from the committee at this time? So before I open it up to the public for comment, I've got a couple of comments to make with regards to the property. So I have a geothermal system at my home, and I know the importance of trying to of how it would be to keeping it with the house. The easement, that is something that is of interest to me. I think that could work. And the trees, as Councillor Mander said, they would be protected by the county, no matter who owned that, whether it was a farmer, whether the land went with the house. They are protected. So if a farmer decided that they were just going to cut them down, or if a subsequent homeowner decided that they were just going to cut them down, there would be fines that would be levied against them. If a farmer or a subsequent homeowner wants to cut the trees down, they can make an application to the county and go through that. Having sat on county council for a number of years and had a number of these applications come before us with regards to cutting down woodlots, I can tell you that the parameters are very high where an application to cut down a woodlot like this would be granted. So I do feel that the trees are protected by the county. That being said, I do think I'm not interested in denying this, but deferring it. I think I think that with new information that there is now a conditional offer on the property, I think that will allow for discussion as to see how can we get as close to that parcel that we're trying to find. And as the applicant said, I mean, yes, we have all made decisions over the number of years that we've been on council with surplus farm dwellings where it's not that neat little package, because, you know, in rural Ontario, farmland doesn't usually come on a nice, neat little package. And so a number of times we have to, make zoning provisions for that. But I think the intent is that we need to get as close, get the parcel down to something that is not going to open us up for further applications, because I think this size, as beautiful as the property is, and I mean, I've driven by it a number of times. I know it to look at it. It's a beautiful piece of property. But I think in the long run, I think we need to work with the applicant and potentially the new owner that's got the offer on the land to see how we can get this down to a more manageable size. So that's my thoughts on that. Councillor Regan, do you have one more comment before I open it up to the for the public comments?
May I?
Yep.
Thank you. Just to Dan Fitzgerald, I'm just wondering, what would the size of the severance be, excluding the trees? Do you know just offhand? I'm looking at your map. I just can't tell. So
Are you like, so you're saying the three other pieces like B, C, and D?
no. Well, my understanding is that the severance is including a stand of trees. Is that so? What I'm just wondering if that severance didn't include those trees, because the trees were protected. I know that was a concern of Councillor Westman's that originally. So I'm just wondering what that would make the severance. It's 11. I'm just going in acres, but it's 11 acres. With that stand of trees, I think there's that stand of trees right in the corner, if I'm reading this right, Dan.
Through the chair of the council, yes, that's correct. It looked like based on what the applicant has provided, it would appear. Again, so they've identified their on their plans Part A as the forested area,
Right.
which would mean the resultant B, C, and D would equate to approximately 3.2 hectares of land.
Okay.
Which is what, about between 7 and 8 acres?
Approximately.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Dan.
Okay, at this time, I will open it up. We do have a number of people who have registered to speak, and how I'm going to do this, I've just got a list of people that have registered, and I'll just ask you if you want to make a comment, and if you do, that would be the time, and if you don't, then you can just say, no, I'm just here to observe. The one thing I will ask you is to try to keep your comments as concise as possible. And if comments have been made over and over and over again, we don't need to keep repeating them. Just say that, you know, the comment was made and I'm in agreement with that. So the first person that I will call on would be Hugh Dietrich. Mr. Dietrich, did you want to add comment?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. No, thanks everybody I just got a few comments here. I'm going to speak against the severance. I'm strongly against it for a few reasons. A couple of things that just going to address the council, like provincial bylaw. They set their bylaws. You can be, as a township, you can be more restrictive, but not less restrictive. So that's where the 2.5 acres or 2.5 or 1 hectare comes in. As far as I own quite a bit of property in the township, I would be very cautious to set precedents on a severance like this, because to meet these guidelines, if I have a house I want to sever, but I want to make it 11 acres, I was going to plant a couple trees and put a geothermal system in, and then I'm going to have these same arguments that I don't want to have a geothermal out there, and I'm going to plant some trees, register it with a solid bay field, away you go and get 11 acre severance. So I don't think, I'm not against the severance, but it has to follow our township guidelines. And that is it, at 1 hectare. And the biggest thing is the precedence. Not every house is going to meet your guidelines. You can't bend, we spend a lot of money on official plans. You can't just go in and say, we're going to make this twisted all around. I think it's going to tie up a lot of council workers' time, and doesn't need to be. And basically, I just want to say I'm strongly against it, and you would not want to set precedent on the rest of the township. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Dietrich.
Actually, I'd like to add something. This is Krista Dietrich.
Oh,
Okay. Sorry, I just wanted to make a comment that, perhaps, that perhaps it would make sense that not to allow applications that do not meet the minimum requirements of the township in the first place. And this would prevent a lot of council time and things going forward, where people aren't even meeting the minimum requirements as is stated in our township guidelines. And then we wouldn't get into all of these exceptions to the rule. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Dietrich. Okay, if that's all we've got from that household, I've got Mr. and Mrs. Vandenberg. And I believe that's Hank and Annie. And if you're talking, you're muted right now. There.
Yes, I think we are unmuted now, isn't it?
Yes, now you are unmuted.
Okay. As farmers, we have the land right budding up to this property. And indeed, we think, which the Dietrich family said already, it's putting like a real precedence for the committee to allow such a big severances. A lot of farmers in Lucan Biddulph have a bush, like a lot in their farms. So that should not be a reason at all to allow that to go with a residence. Protecting agriculture land, the ponds are actually taken out of agriculture land. We have had houses too with leaking basement problems, and we would just put a drain right around the house and drain it down. So there is other possibilities that way. So originally by the current owner, that land is taken out of agriculture. So that should not necessarily be an argument either. Yeah, because the house is laying on a hill, so it should have been able to drain down by just putting a drain around the house. And I think, that our main concern is having such a big lot in the agriculture community, because whatever the next owner will do there or establish a business, it's very hard to try to stop that. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Vandenberg. Next one I've got is Steve Thomas or Lori Lucas. I think they're one and the same. And then if you are speaking, you're muted. And if you don't want to speak, if you can just let us know. I'll ask again if you wanted to say something, Mr. Thomas or Ms. Lucas. Okay, so seeing nothing or hearing nothing, we'll go back to the committee. And was there any further comment from the committee at this point?
Kathy, I got one more point.
Oh, certainly, Mr. Go ahead, Dewey.
One thing too, you guys talked about protecting about agricultural land. You got to realize every severance that is created, you set new minimum distances with everything as well. Having said that, like, I know you can still have a severance, but it gets even greater with a larger severance. So if somebody wants to build a barn somewhere else, then you draw a big circle around that as well. And also on the ponds, if that is a separate I'm just gonna ask, maybe you guys are aware of this, but if that is a separate lot, wouldn't those ponds all have to be fenced as well? To meet your bylaws?
I don't know, because I'm looking at Ron right now. We don't have, like, if you've got a pond on a property, they don't have to be fenced, do they?
I'm not aware that they would be. I can't answer that for sure. And the example I'm thinking about is the stormwater pond on Saintsbury Line beside Barry Hodgins' house. That's our stormwater pond, and that's not fenced either. So I want to say no, but I can't say for 100% certain.
Okay, thank you.
All right, is that it, Mr. Dietrich?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, I believe that Mr. Watson's got his hand up. Did you have another comment before I turn it back to the committee, Mr. Watson?
Am I on?
Yes, now we can hear you.
I wanted to make a couple of comments. First of all, the Planning Act and the provincial policy statement are not about protecting agricultural land at all costs. The provincial interests are set out in the Planning Act, and they are myriad. There are many of them, and some of them end up conflicting with each other. When you have minimized the amount of lost farmland in the course of a severance, then the other provincial interests have to be considered. And those include things like protecting the natural heritage areas. I don't know if you're aware, but the zoning for A1 and A3 agricultural lands include the use for forestry. So forestry as a permitted use would allow somebody who's got A1 or A3 lands to harvest the trees for whatever purpose they wish, as long as it's for own use. The Middlesex County bylaw allows a new owner of the land, once they've had it for 2 years, to use the trees for their own use. And because one of the permitted uses on A1 and A3 lands is forestry, then that own use becomes quite expanded. A surplus dwelling lot is not allowed forestry use. The comment was made by one of the commenters that my house sits on a hill. It sits on a hill because to the north is a deep depression. That's where the pond was built. All the water that comes down from the north acreage comes down into that depression. It then has to gravitate somewhere, and it used to gravitate through my cellar. It no longer gravitates through my cellar because the pond was excavated and the drainage was put in to carry the water past the house and to the ditch that is south of the house. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Watson. Any other questions or comments from the committee? Clarification needed after hearing comments and discussion. I guess I might just ask Dan, just on that comment that Mr. Watson just made about the protection of the natural heritage. Is there, like, can you expand on that from a planning perspective? Or maybe not.
Yeah, sorry, I was screaming child in the background here. So with respect to protections, the lands are identified as a natural heritage feature in the Middlesex Natural Heritage System study. So it's not protected by the actual study, it's protected by the Woodlands Conservation Bylaw, which specifically states you cannot harvest protected lands. That's the bylaw that's in place that affords the county the ability to charge people and require them to replace anything that's cut down. So what I would state is that it is possible to harvest the land sustainably through a permit that's issued through the county. And that is something that's quite commonly done on agricultural parcels that are protected forest lands. So while it, from a high level, you may say that's not agricultural land, it's a forest, it still formulates a part of that agricultural operation that is a potential income source for a farmer through sustainable forestry harvesting.
Okay, so we do have a turn my iPad back on. Recommendation in front of us, and it is to defer. And I guess I'm looking for the committee to move something at this point. Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I'll make that motion to defer the decision. Thank you.
Okay. And a seconder for that, Councillor Regan. And I guess my question then to defer it.
Work towards the policy of 1 hectare.
Okay.
Towards that goal.
Have the conversation with the applicant.
To see what's in the toolbox to try to make that happen.
Okay, any other further discussion from the committee? Councillor Westman?
Yeah, I guess I'm not opposed to deferring it, but yeah, I continue to be concerned, about the potential loss of these trees, and there's more to the ponds than just a couple of holes with water in it. There's some natural shrubberies and things that were put in to attract pollinators and provide a habitat for animals as well. So, I mean, I have a lot on my mind about it, and if we have to defer it, I understand that, but I still want to express that I'm troubled by this. So, thank you.
Appreciate that. I think everybody's in agreement that as the parcel of land is right now, it is a beautiful piece of property. There's no question. We just have to find a way to make it work within our policies. All right, so there's a motion on to accept the planner's recommendation to defer and to work with the applicant. Any further discussion? All opposed? And that's carried. So Dan, maybe just what do you see as the next steps from this?
Through the chair. So the next steps in this case through a deferral is for administration to work with the applicant to work towards achieving the 2 items that were noted in the deferral. So that would be proof of consolidation or a demonstration of consolidation, and then a reduction of the area to better suit and meet the requirements of the provincial policy.
And is there a timeline? Would there be a timeline on that?
Through the chair, no, there wouldn't be a timeline technically. Okay. Applications are subject to timelines, and if the applicant is unwilling to make those changes or present said information, they can appeal to the LPAT for a non-decision.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, moving.
Madam Mayor, sorry,
yeah.
It's Peter. Did anybody second that motion?
Yeah, Councillor Regan did.
Oh, sorry, I missed it. Okay, thank you.
Nope, no worries. Okay, so now we need to adjourn our Committee of Adjustment to convene a public meeting under the Planning Act. So if I can get a mover and seconder for that, Councillor Westman and Deputy Mayor Manders. Okay. And now in front of us is an application for a draft plan of subdivision. And for the proposed Timber Ridge subdivision. So again, at this point, I will turn it over to Dan.
So through the chair, through the mayor, sorry, to all members of council. just to give everyone a precursor, so the report before council tonight is to fulfill the public meeting requirement for a subdivision application for 39 TLB 2002 and the concurrent zoning bylaw amendment application, which is ZBA 12/2020 for a subdivision that is locally known as Timber Ridge. So before I go any further, I'm just going to share the location map, and I have put together a few slides so that everyone can kind of see what's being proposed. So the applicant in this particular case is proposing a plan of subdivision, which encompassing parts of 2 separate blocks of land. The plan of subdivision would include generally the following. So 177 proposed building lots for single detached dwellings, which is approximately 8.3 hectares. 1 block reserved for medium density residential housing, which is approximately 4.07 hectares and is conceptually designed for 78 units based on the zoning provisions considered. An extension of Gilmore Drive would be warranted across Sainsbury line. They're also considering 4 new roads, which are listed as Street A, B, C, and D on the attached draft plan of subdivision. There's 2 blocks for future road extension considerations, 4 blocks representing a 0.3 meter or 1 foot reserve to restrict access to remnant lands outside of the subdivision. And then 1 additional block for a future consideration of an extension if the settlement boundary were to advance in this area. So the subject property as a whole is approximately 80.1 hectares or 198 acres in area and is located on the east side of Sainsbury line, adjacent or east of the Ridge Crossing subdivision. Subject to the S application, the proposed development would consist of lands with an approximate area of 15.68 hectares or 37.8 acres that are currently within the existing settlement boundary of Lucan. The remainder of lands, which encompasses approximately 64.4 hectares, noted above, are outside of the settlement area of Lucan and do not formulate part of the application. The lands are surrounded with existing agricultural vacant lands to the north, south, and east, and an existing residential subdivision and low-density single-family homes to the west. The lands are designated settlement area or urban and community in the Middlesex County official plan, residential in the township of Lucan Biddulph official plan, and are also zoned a future residential FR zone and a site-specific future residential exception FR-4 zone in the township of Lucan Biddulph comprehensive zoning bylaw. As noted in the planner's report, the development is planning to construct the development in 2 separate phases. Phase 1 would generally include 130 single detached dwelling units on the north side of the property and would drain to a proposed temporary storm pond across units 1 to 10 on the conceptual draft plan. Water would then be directed under Sainsbury line through an easement north of the Ridge Crossing development. The applicant is also proposing that the remainder would be subject to the completion of a new storm pond, which would be located on the municipal lands as part of a regional stormwater management strategy. Sanitary for the development is proposed to be connected to Kent Ave, which is across Sainsbury line, and the water is proposed to be connected to an existing service on Sainsbury line. As previously noted and depicted on this plan, the developer is seeking to establish 177 single detached lots in a block for multi-unit residential in the proposed format of cluster townhouse development. An extension of Gilmore Drive across Sainsbury line, as well as 4 road allowances, which you can see here as Street A, Street C, B, and D. In order to accommodate, flip that. Give me 1 second. So in order to accommodate the request, the applicant is requesting 2 separate zones for the subject lands. The site is currently zoned, as noted before, future residential zone, as well as a site-specific future residential exception zone. As depicted on this conceptual plan, the lands to the north and shown on this plan as the tan color lots are proposed to be a site-specific residential first density exception zone, consistent with the existing zoning in the Ridge Crossing subdivision west of the lands. This zone would consider reductions generally to the standard minimum front yard requirements from 15 meters to 12 meters, and the minimum lot area from 460 meters squared to 400 square meters. And then the lands to the south, and depicted on the plan as yellow and pink units, are proposed to be a site-specific residential third density exception zone for the purpose of permitting multi-unit cluster townhouse forms of housing. The exception zone, as identified in the planning information report, seeks the following reductions. So a reduction to the minimum lot area of 1,500 meters squared to 350 meters squared per unit, a reduction in the minimum frontage requirement from 30 meters to 11 meters per unit, an increase to the maximum lot coverage of from 35% to 55%, a reduction to the minimum front yard setback from 8 meters to 6 meters, a reduction to the minimum interior side yard setback from 3 meters to 1.2 meters, a reduction from the exterior side yard setback from 8 meters to 3 meters, a reduction to the minimum rear yard setback from 10 meters to 9.5 meters, and a change to the minimum outdoor amenity area requirement from 35% of lot area to 1,350 square meters. The Middlesex County official plan identifies Lucan as a settlement area and defers the municipal official plan to delineate the boundaries of the settlement area. The lands subject to the application, as noted previously, are within the settlement area of Lucan and are designated residential within the township official plan. Planning staff have reviewed the proposal against the provincial policy statements, the county official plan, as well as the township official plan. Several policies have been identified in the planning report, which will be utilized to prepare a recommendation for council. Generally speaking, the PPS county official plan, as well as local official plan, all state that development shall be focused in existing settlement areas and do promote appropriate mixes of density and housing types beyond low density single detached residential. More specifically, section 1.1.1 of the PPS speaks to the establishing and promoting healthy, livable, and safe communities. As well as section 1.3.1 to 1.1.3.4 speak to settlement areas being the focus of growth and development. They also promote development that efficiently uses land and resources, are appropriate for existing infrastructure and public services, that accommodate a range of housing options through redevelopment and intensification, and by promoting appropriate development standards which facilitate intensification, redevelopment, and compact form that avoids and mitigates risks to public health. Additionally, section 1.1.3.6 further clarifies that new development taking place in designated growth areas should occur adjacent to existing built-up areas and shall have compact form, mixes of uses and densities that allow for the efficient use of land, infrastructure, as well as public service facilities. Likewise, generally, the county official plan also identifies housing policies and provides general directions. More specifically, section 2.3.7 encourages a wider variety of housing types, sizes, and tenure to meet the projected demographic and market requirements, while also promoting intensification, as well as redevelopment to occur within the settlement areas where appropriate levels of servicing do exist and are available. Now, from the perspective of the township official plan, it does provide more specific policies related to achieving the growth and intensification. Residential designation in the township official plan, which is found in sections 2.1.5, directs the majority of population growth to the village of Lucan. Sections 2.1.5.1 and 2 discuss the potential for residential development, noting primarily single detached dwellings. However, at the same time, it does recognize that multiple forms of residential development will be provided, and the potential form for more affordable housing, as well as housing more able to meet the increasing diverse needs of the preferences of the community. Sections 2.1.5.3 speak to review criteria for subdivisions, and 2.1.5.5 speaks to the medium density being encouraged to locate where direct and proximate access to arterial collector roads is available, where they're close to commercial areas, schools, parks, and where municipal services are also available. And then finally, our policy section 2.1.5.6 also requires development to incorporate a range of housing types and densities. Notice of the application was circulated to agencies as well as property owners in accordance with the Planning Act requirements. The township will continue to receive correspondence from stakeholders and agencies. Of note, our comments provided more specifically by Thames Valley District School Board, as well as residents within the area. Concerns have been raised about the lack of park space with the proposal, as well as the lack of diversity in lot sizes for the single detached dwellings, generally is what we've heard. From Thames Valley's perspective, there is concerns about the existing capacity within their existing school structure. And they have noted that potential future development may require the placement of a holding zone in the area, which would potentially redirect students or members of the community from this particular location to locations where schooling is available. And what that basically means is busing students elsewhere where availability is there within the existing school infrastructure. Also, I would note that the Conservation Authority has not had the opportunity to provide comments or are still reviewing at this particular point in time. So we are liaisoning back and forth with them, and hopefully be able to provide more comprehensive comments shortly. So given the above, staff recommend that council receives the planning report as information, and we look forward to discussion tonight to receive any comments that council as well as the public may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that report, Dan. So we're going to approach this the same way we approach the other meeting. I'm going to turn it over to the applicant in a minute, and then I'll go to council for questions and comments. And then we've got a number of people who have registered to add comment, and we'll open it up to them as well. So at this time, I will ask the applicant, and I don't know if Mr. Campanelli is going to speak or if Jason Johnson from Dillon is going to speak. But at this point, I will open it up to the applicant to speak to the application.
It's actually Melanie Muir from Dillon Consulting. Jason's also here, but I am the planner on the file.
Okay.
And we're actually just here to answer any questions or concerns. Mr. Fitzgerald provided a very thorough report, basically covering everything at this point. So we're here to answer any questions or concerns, both myself from the planning and Jason from the engineering side of it.
Okay. So nothing to add unless asked.
Correct.
Right. Okay. All right. Thanks, Melanie. Sorry, I didn't realize that you were going to take the lead on that. Sorry. Okay. At this point, then I will ask council to start the discussion. Councillor Regan.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I did email to Dan Fitzgerald and just council, members of council earlier this week about a couple of concerns I have, because I think what we need to do is I think we need to speak for people who haven't moved here yet. And when I'm looking at the map, I was sort of reminded of many years ago when I taught urban geography, and I'm looking at subdivision planning back from 1948, and I really don't see any really difference. So I just want to make sure I understand. So I've got a couple of comments and questions, and for Dan. So I'm understanding that it's going to be 240 residents and about 600 people. I figure it's about 600 people living in this area. I see no green space. I see no place for people who are living there. I see houses, I see townhouses, and I get that. But I don't see any place for people to connect to at all in this area. And that's it's going to be a pretty dense area. And again, where these, I mean, really, when you look at and I know it's a couple of years down the road, but you look at where it is, there's just nothing for people to connect to. And that bothers me because we've had a number of discussions at council and in the community about promoting our culture, the uniqueness of Lucan, and I don't see how this is going to help anybody attach to our community. All right, I may not be making a lot of friends here, so that's okay. The second thing I'm really concerned about is the reference or the concern, the comment that the board, Thames Valley, put in. And as most people know that I work in a teacher with the board. And I know this might be just sort of a cut and paste answer, and I get that, or a comment. My concern is that I really think, because people, they don't live here yet, and we need to speak up for them, is that, and I know they're saying that people need to be aware of the fact that their kids might be bussed out, and, I don't know if you want to put your 5-year-old on a bus at 6:30 in the morning to take them somewhere else. And again, we need to start that conversation with the trustees. I think with the board, we need to make sure that we've got a place for these kids to go to school. And it bothers me that if you've got 300 kids in this neighborhood and 100 are going to one school and 100 are going to another and 100 going to another. And I know how important schools are to a community. I mean, I was at Medway for a short period of time, and I know how people in the community feel about Medway. I know that. So I'm seeing, again, with the cohesion, the consistency, I'm concerned, very concerned. So I guess my question, again, is just maybe for Dan, is that with that comment that the board makes, I mean, how much can we push for that? I mean, I know it's down the road. Maybe we won't have to worry about it, but I'm just thinking about people 3 years from now or 2 years from now buying a house there, and they need to know that. Not only that, but again, for the sense of community. I mean, those are the things that kind of concern me. So again, it wouldn't matter if it was this development or any development. I'm just thinking, you're coming to Lucan, move here, raise your families here. I just think that if we don't start that conversation, we don't start looking at how subdivisions are developed. I mean, example, the lack of green space. I mean, I'm not moving from Lucan, and I don't want to be here 20 years and people point at me and say, oh, you had an opportunity to do this and you didn't. So I think, again, what I'm asking is that, first of all, is that we open up that conversation and we start moving towards approaching the board, whatever we have to do. And then secondly, I'm just wondering with Dan, if you can answer, how much can we do here? Can we, I don't know, but as far as, putting that in a condition and making that stick or make it, I just think I'd like to put a big sign up and saying, by the way, your child may not be able to go to school here. I know that might be pushing it, but sorry, Dan?
Yes, through the chair to Councillor Reagan. I totally understand where you're coming from for the concern raised. So I did have a conversation with the planner from Thames Valley with respect to the comment that was issued. So the comment wasn't meant to be malicious in any way in intent. It was more meant to be transparent, to notify the township as well as the county that existing service levels may be at capacity or beyond, and additional accommodation may not be possible with current situations. So the comment was not necessarily to say that it would happen. It was to say that it may be required, but again, that would be a decision of the Board of Trustees. So certainly council, if they so choose, could have write a letter with it, whatever it might be, petition the Board of Trustees for any decision that might come down with that. But what I would say is this: that their intent is to provide that transparency through that comment, which would formulate a condition of draft plan approval, which would then formulate a requirement in a future subdivision agreement. So in this particular case, they are requesting that a condition of draft plan approval be that any future purchasers or lessees within the subdivision be notified of this specific potential of a holding zone, which would potentially necessitate any children or community members living in this particular development or in other developments, if necessary, that they may not be able to attend, specifically Wilberforce at this point in time, if there is that holding provision in place. So it is that potential, it is that level of transparency that basically any future owner of the lands would have to be notified in advance of purchasing or leasing that this is a potential condition that they should be aware of prior to making that decision.
Okay, thank you.
Any follow-up, Councillor Reagan?
Not right now. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I might just add to that is that this is this does open up the opportunity for us to have a formal discussion with the school board as we go through this process, so that everything is kind of open and they know what we're doing, we know what they're doing, and we can have that communication. I think that there's better communication that goes on between the board and municipalities than in the past. In fact, I believe that there's an annual facilities meeting this coming week that it happens between board staff and municipal staff, and these sort of things are discussed. So I think it's a well-founded comment to make, Councillor Reagan, and I think that it just heightens our awareness that we need to have this conversation. And I would just like to say, just anybody watching, there is no holding zone at the moment, so everybody in Lucan Biddulph at the moment that is going to school at Wilberforce can still go to school at Wilberforce. So I don't want to create a sense of panic over that at this moment. But, okay, any other comments, questions from council at this point? Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, just a few things. I mean, I'm not going to repeat what Daniel said on the green space. I think with that volume of land being developed and density, there needs to be green space provided for the residents. The school comment is more concerning at the time of dig. I mean, I realize that can be put on the deed. I would, depending on the council of the day, because I think this is probably going to be a couple years out. I would like to see on the deed the contact number, because as we know, this is not a developer problem. This is not our staff's problem. This is not council's problem. This is the trustees and the school board's problem. So, you know, if at the time of build and dig, I think the deed should state, if you plan on having children or have children, this is your contact number to confirm whether there is capacity or not, providing there's a holding still concern in Lucan Biddulph. Because I really think that needs to not be our staff's problem as we continue to put up our hand for development in Lucan Biddulph. The other thing, I guess just a question, I don't know, to Melanie or to Jeff. With this development, is there the sewer capacity existing currently right now for this development?
I don't know who wants to take that. Jeff's just off camera, right?
No,
Oh,
Jeff was just hit the wrong button.
There we go. Sorry, Madam Mayor. Yeah, so we did have a preliminary engineering discussion about a week ago. With Jason included, and myself and Dan and a number of other people were part of it. The short answer is there is capacity at the plant for some of this development. All of the development, there is not capacity. Having said that, when this builds out, the timetable comes into effect, and there was a bit of discussion on how many years it would take to build this entire first phase out, and it certainly would be something to look at, but there is an amount of capacity that will get this phase going.
Okay, thank you. The two other things. Well, I didn't see, again, I don't know if Melanie would comment on this or Jeff, I didn't see any storm swim ponds there.
And through the mayor, the storm, There is a bit of discussion with the storm. We still are talking. Obviously, when you engineer something, there's always going to be ways of adjusting the engineering to meet the needs. So the first one of the first comments is that we would the plan is to take it back down to the regional storm water management area that exists already just off Saintsbury. There's a bit of talk there. We have to go through the ABCA on that, and they haven't provided their comments on that, as well as obviously that is township property. So approval there will have to be given through council for that to proceed. So in our preliminary discussions and preliminary comments, I did talk to Jason about some of that the final engineering on the storm certainly is going to still have to be worked on before anything finalizes on this.
Okay, and then last thing, if they obviously with the school across the road on Saintsbury, which is a busy road, things like a crosswalk I can envision there, that sort of infrastructure. Definitely a crosswalk, obviously, with that volume of people coming across. Is that something that would be done at the time by staff as needed, or the developer would be part of their development? Or I'm assuming that, or that a traffic study, or?
Yeah, so again, through the mayor, there have to be a traffic study done with this amount of traffic going in there. And part of that would play on Saintsbury and how we develop the entranceways going into this development. There's some interesting, how this plays out in the development of Saintsbury as a whole. It needs to be looked at also. So
that's all for now. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor, any other questions or comments from council? Councillor Mastarakis.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. Another question I had, I was speaking to some residents that were previously from another center, and when they had rapid growth in their community, they talked about something about there was builder development versus design or architectural development, where the municipality put design requirements into future developments. So the type of streets, the type of landscaping, the type of lighting, the spacing. So it was the municipality that kind of designed it ahead of time, putting guidelines in to manage the look over time. And so the builders had a template of what the community wanted. So it's new to me. I don't know if Dan, if you've heard of what the difference is between design or architectural development versus builder development.
Through the chair. So there, yeah, you kind of got two things going on. So there's different aspects or avenues that you can control design. One is from an urban design perspective, which is generally done through what's referred to as an architectural control within an existing subdivision. So an architectural control basically requires any future development at time of building permit. So the physical house would have to meet certain requirements that are established through something generally like an urban design guideline. So there may be a consideration that council want to implement an urban design guideline to steer development in this area as to how it's going to look and how it's going to feel at the end of the day. I know a more recent example of that would be in Middlesex Center through the Kilworth Heights West development. So there is an urban design guideline requirement in that particular development, which does also add the layer of an architectural control. And that's more at the site specific level, not on the subdivision design level. Generally from a subdivision design level, you could also ask for an urban design brief that would institute and initiate the types of development standards that the municipality or township in this case has already pre-approved of. So certain widths of streets, certain types of infrastructure, whether it be street lights, certain types of setbacks. So it's more of an overall comprehensive master plan for a subdivision, as opposed to saying, well, we're just going to develop it this way, and it's going to evolve holistically, and it'll look how it looks at the end of the day. Those types of strategies really gear down on, from an urban design perspective, how do you really want the subdivision to function? How do you want cars to move within the area? How do you want it to look and feel? And how does the pedestrian at the end of the day feel when they utilize that space within an existing subdivision? So from the subdivision side, there are certainly engineering design guidelines that could guide and help provide the developer and even municipal staff at the end of the day with a tool that helps you visualize what the end result is at the end of the day. But from the site specific level, that's where you get down to an urban design guideline with an architectural control, which physically controls the look and feel of the actual building at the end of the day. So usually townships and municipalities do not take on that responsibility. It's usually farmed out to something like an architectural firm that would be established through something like an urban design control and guideline passed by council.
Thank you, Dan.
Okay, any other questions, comments from council? Deputy Mayor.
I'm not sure if Dan or staff or maybe the developer would comment. I guess I'm not sure. I have actually had a comment on the diversification. As everybody knows on this, I don't like using the word affordable. Less lots are less expensive. Bigger lots are more expensive. There's nothing affordable. The builders are building at market rate what they can get, which is fine. I mean, that's the case. Less expensive or more expensive, depending on how the market is and the economy is. So there has been comments made that people would like to see, some diversification, and actually the opposite is larger lots within the subdivision of smaller lots that would be more expensive houses with the less expensive houses. So it does, when the planner was reviewing all the much smaller than our policy sizes of the lots, it does seem to, that small town feeling, a little bit bigger lots, it does seem to be missing from this proposal and most that we see or talked about going forward. So that's a comment I want to make. Also, how much input do we have when it comes to something like that? As again, I don't blame the developers. Again, market rate, density, volume, move it, as opposed to maybe what's needed in our community. Where I'm going with that is the single floor condos. Like, I'm not sure my uncle lives over there, Nelson Wolf project, realizing that was a long build out, almost ahead of its time, and just seems like the amount of people that I run into in our community would just love to see a single floor condo. I don't know if our community, and again, there doesn't seem to be a need for that the developers aren't accommodating. Is that something where when we go to apply new future residential land that we've got a better say in the development? When the developer owns the land, we really have no say, so we're dictated to. How do we get involved in something like that?
Through the chair, I'm assuming that's to me.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So generally speaking, the avenue to really get involved from the design perspective is the initiation of a secondary plan. So as you're aware, Lucan Biddulph is going through the process of a CIP at this point in time. So that's one step and avenue, but more from a grant beneficiary perspective. A secondary plan is kind of, you have your official plan and then you have a secondary plan. Secondary plans are meant to dive more into the specific design guidelines and aspects of development within specified areas. So that would really give you teeth at the end of the day to be able to go in and say, we want something that's different than just your standard subdivision that we always get. That gives you the opportunity to, be more creative, design differently, just by specifically presenting additional policies that are beyond what you currently have in your existing official plan. A good example of that, again, would be Middlesex Center and Kilworth Heights West, where they have, all of Kamoka Kilworth is now within an additional secondary plan area, which lays out additional design related policies that help steer development towards a more, I guess, urbanized look and feel, as opposed to the traditional larger lot subdivision styles that you see in your more rural communities. So honestly, it all just depends at the end of the day how you want to go. You could even go from a perspective of doing it an opposite way. If there's a certain look that you want to maintain, you feel like you're not maintaining, you could create a secondary plan with those specific design policies to achieve that goal as well. So it all just depends on how the community wants to proceed with design at the end of the day through subdivisions within the community. But there's kind of that overarching tool, that policy tool, and it's a larger process at the end of the day that really helps to guide future development and how it's supposed to look and feel in the community.
Any further follow-up, Deputy Mayor Manders?
Well, I guess the only thing is more teeth in that, Dan. Unfortunately, I have to use this applicant that's in front of us. Sorry, guys. More teeth on land that's going to be designated in the future to do that, obviously, than this applicant that already owns the land that has a future residential designation. This is more harder. It's more dictated to our community, correct?
Yeah, so when through the chair, when someone makes an application, when you make an application, you're subject to the rules and standards when you do so. So as a council, you can't come in after the fact and say, no, we want you to meet this new regulation that we've now passed. So in this particular case, if council was considering something like the institution of a secondary plan for design guidelines, it would be to subsequent future applications of lands, not this particular one.
Good. So yeah, anything new forward? No, thank you.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, any other further questions, comments from council? Councillor Mastarakis.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. I had a resident talk about skip development, where something about you can't cross a road and develop, you have to follow the same road or something. Is there something to that effect where you have to keep the development on a path that follows where other connections are without crossing roadways? Can you clarify if that's the case somewhere?
Through the chair. So what I would say is this: there's currently right now, there's obviously only so many designated lands that are within the urban settlement boundary. In this case, this particular lot is one of the larger remaining residential parcels that's within the urban settlement boundary. So I would say, generally speaking, it would be good principle for future land consideration that it be located on the periphery of where existing development areas are. And that way you're achieving the most efficient format of development by using existing infrastructure, tapping into it and expanding from there. I do agree from a theoretical planning perspective, and that's kind of where the provincial policy comes into play in the county and local official plan, that there are servicing hierarchies, and there's some instances that it makes more sense to develop lands, and there's some instances where it makes less sense. And you're right from a theoretical perspective, continuing development from existing sites would make more theoretical sense. In this case, lands abutting are not within settlement boundaries, and this land is. So that's why you're seeing it skip over Saintsbury line, where there is available land within the settlement boundary, as opposed to another area which might be abutting an existing subdivision, but unfortunately the land is outside of the settlement boundary at this point in time. But it's certainly, council has the comprehensive municipal comprehensive review going on right now of the official plan, and that's certainly something that should be taken into consideration, by council, as well as recommendations from your consultant and a review from the county. That would be the most efficient form of development is to continue expanding services from the existing that you already have, not jumping out into another area and then having to connect all the way back into your existing system.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? So a number of the comments that I have already been made, so I won't spend a lot of time repeating. Obviously, the green space is of huge concern, and that there isn't a dedicated green space on the plan in front of us. And so there's that. With regards to what they're presenting and what they're asking for us, I guess my question would be, is this set up so that for the sake of discussion, we approve this and goes forward, that we will not be visited with minor variance requests again, like we're experiencing in the subdivision across the road?
Through the chair to the mayor. So what I would say is we would do our best at time of zoning to ensure that a development plan is feasible at the end of the day to achieve the desired result of what they're showing. I wouldn't be able to guarantee that, say they sell the lands and another developer comes in and wants to do something different. It certainly is possible that they could do so. However, with that said, as council recently has seen, it doesn't guarantee, first of all, that they can make a minor variance application. They have to do so through resolution of council. So you can't apply for a minor variance within 2 years of an approved zoning bylaw amendment. Would be the one thing. If it's beyond that 2 years, it still doesn't require council or committee at that point in time to issue a minor variance. It's based on the merits of the application at that day and whether or not it meets the 4 acts of a planning test. So no, I wouldn't be able to guarantee that they would not be able to, but I think we are going to scrutinize it enough to get to a point that what they're showing on a plan is achievable at the end of the day.
Thanks. I thought it was interesting in your report, Dan, that one of the first comments that you made when you addressed our official plan was that we have to be sensitive to the small town character. And we may have gone beyond that at this point with the development that we've experienced and how we've grown. But I guess my concern is, and that the deputy mayor did reference it, is the smaller lots and the lack of diversification, I guess. And obviously it's on paper, so when you actually put it to life, it does look better, but on paper it looks very routine, and that would be a concern of mine. That is how to bring the interest into that subdivision. One of the concerns that we have now, and I don't know whether that's a discussion that we have at this point or more at a site plan part or a site plan discussion, but is when it comes to traffic calming. We've got concerns on the other side of the road on Gilmore that it's a straightaway road, and there's speed concerns. And of course that will just continue as it crosses over across Sainsbury. So at what point could we talk about traffic calming so that we don't run into the same concerns that are being raised now?
Through the chair to the mayor. So now would be a great opportunity to speak to that. So
I'm speaking because that is the way the streets are designed. I think that the one lesson that I've learned in the years that I've been on council, and you learn with experience. And I think probably when I was first on council, I don't think I knew enough to ask these questions when we were discussing the Ridge Crossing development. Now you have the experience of having people live in these environments, and so I would be very concerned with how the streets are designed, and that we get some appropriate traffic calming in there. The other Ish, and again, whether this is the discussion, and maybe even it was addressed when the deputy mayor brought up his concerns about trying to get certain things into a subdivision. But you know, the last application we just spoke about an hour ago had to, you know, there was a lot of discussion about trees, and in the last number of meetings we've spoken about trees. And one of the suggestions, and I can't remember who it came up from, it might have came up from Councillor Masterakis, was about putting the onus on that every lot had to come with a tree or something like that. Again, at what point would that discussion happen?
Through the mayor, it would be basically, I would say anything that council would like to see on the plan or have addressed by the developer or applicant should be brought up now. That the intent of tonight's meeting is to bring all these things forward so that staff can have this information to go back to the developer and discuss further.
Okay, so that's a concern. And the stormwater management, we've had that discussion, and I really think that needs to be drilled down as to how that's going to happen and what that's going to look like. I think there's a few unknowns out there that are of concern, not having those answers. And then again, just with the town houses, and I look at what's being built now, I don't have a very good eye for, you know, looking at something on paper and then being able to visualize what it's going to look like until I see that. And so now I look at the townhouses that are going up now, which of course is an extremely exciting development. But I'm willing to obviously see it in its final presentation, because I have to say I'm a little concerned because of snow removal and making sure that we're going to be able to move snow appropriately, and where's that snow going to go throughout, because from what's being presented for Timber Ridge is, I think, along the similar lines to what's being built at Ridge Crossing. So I want to make sure that, you know, we can move the snow appropriately and that the snow has a place to go, because I think that will be an important discussion to have. And again, I guess that comment can be made tonight as well. I think that was all I had at this stage in the game. So unless there isn't any other comments from council at this time, I will open it up to the public, and I'm going to approach it in the same way that I approached the other meeting, in that I already have a list of people that have joined us, and I'm just going to go down my list and call out your name. If you want to speak to it, I would ask that you unmute and speak. If you don't want to speak, if you're just here to watch and listen to the comments, then just let me know that you don't have any comments to add to it. So the first person that I would like to call upon is Sheila Hodgins. And if Sheila, if you're speaking, you have to unmute. So maybe I will move on from Sheila, and if she can unmute, then I'll circle back to her. So the next person I've got is Lori Hodgins. And maybe she's left the meeting already. Okay, Gord and Joanne Hardy.
Hello, Kathy. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Joanne.
We just want to thank you very much for allowing us to join the meeting. I'm here with Gord and Frank Hardy. We certainly agree with all the comments that you have had regarding, the green space, the smaller lots, the trees, traffic, the school board. I guess in having agricultural land nearby, we do have an additional concern regarding the water management, the drainage, that type of thing, so that we're able to continue on farming where we're at.
Okay, is that all the comments, or did Gord or Frank have anything to add to that?
Kathy, it's Frank speaking.
Okay.
I'm a little concerned with how the water is going to get from that temporary pond. Will it go underground, or how is it going to get to the other side of the road? Like, is it going into municipal drains that are there, or how is it going to get across there for the temporary?
Okay, who would best be able to answer that one? Jeff, maybe?
Yeah, and through the mayor. So again, this development, like Dan said, it's actually on two water courses, so it's actually divided. So I think Mr. Hardy's probably talking the one to the north that will have to cross under Saintsbury. So what they'll do is, yes, they'll take advantage of the municipal drain, and through engineering and through stormwater management, they'll have to feed that water through the existing municipal water main or municipal drain, or upgrade the municipal water drain to meet the needs of what is going to be built. So as it's engineered, they'll see what's there, and if it has to be upgraded, then it'll be upgraded to accommodate some extra flows. But yes, it will follow the municipal drain across the road.
Two concerns I have there. The first one is that I understood from working with the drains across the road, they would not allow the storm sewer water to enter the municipal drains. They had to keep those two waters separately until they got to the creek, but they wouldn't allow them to mix. The other concern I have is the municipal drain is overtaxed at the moment without having any more going into it, and or coming in faster, and it won't handle it. There'll just be a lake on the east side of the road if the tile all the way to the creek is not enlarged, all the way across the road. It's not big enough.
And through the mayor, maybe, and unless Jason wants to comment on that, but that'll be something that when we actually do the engineering side of the stormwater management, and there'll be a full study on that, that'll determine that size and what's there and how it's going to leave the property.
Okay.
That's great. We appreciate the comments, Kathy.
Okay. All right. Was there anything else, Joanne?
No, we just look forward to being able to be involved in anything future, to participate, provide our input.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. Thanks very much for joining us. Okay, so I see that Sheila has unmuted herself, so I'll circle back. Sheila, did you have some comments to add, Sheila Hodgins?
Yes, I do, of course. My house is right smack in the middle of all of this. Daniel, I liked what you had to say, so hopefully council will take that into account, a lot of your comments. My big thing, number one, is Saintsbury Line. As all of us currently living on Saintsbury Line, the traffic will be horrendous. So that's a big issue. The other, for me, it's timeline. When is this going to begin? I understand from what you said, Dan, The first phase, there will be 130 houses built on the north side. And there's enough capacity, sewage capacity for that to be built. So what type of a timeline would that occur? If this was all approved, what year are we looking at? Like, are we looking at 5 years, like 2 years? Best guess.
Okay, so I've got both Dan and Jeff, so I don't know who wants to
Okay.
go first.
For me, that's you know, as I said, my house is right close by.
Yep.
Yeah, through the mayor, I would maybe ask if Jason Johnson is there from the developer side, if he could comment on the development timeline that they have for this proposal.
Okay, Jason?
Hi, good evening. So the timing for this project would be at the very earliest would be 2024. The current agreement with the developer and the current resident in the farmhouse is until January 2024. So
Okay.
that would be the absolute earliest that we would see development start.
Okay. And how long, once that started, the construction started, how long would that take? How long does it take to build 130 houses? A year?
It would be based on market demand. The servicing would all be all the servicing would be completed, I would say, in one construction season, and then the build out of that first phase would be based on the demand.
Okay. And then the second phase. So where is the second phase going to start? So the second phase will not be started until the sewage plant is expanded. Is that correct?
Well, there's a couple of I guess constraints with the development, sewage treatment capacity just being one of them. So that would be a constraint, and also there's some constraints in terms of stormwater management design. The southerly portion goes to a separate drain that would require coordination with an adjacent landowner. So it's something that can be engineered, but let's just say there's further hurdles, I guess, to have to get over to develop the southern portion.
So that would be like another 3 or 4 years. I'm just trying to get an idea here.
Yeah, like in a very general sense, I would say that the first phase of 130 units might take anywhere from 2 to 4 years to build out, and the second phase of the medium density block and the remaining might be on a similar timeline, 2 to 3 years maybe.
Okay. So you talk about. I'm looking at the plan, and I'm at 34,122. So right now, this, you know, most of the acreage around my house on the south side, that's for future townhouses, right? Is that correct?
Through the mayor, yes, that's correct. It's conceptually designed as a medium density block, which is shown as townhouse development.
Okay. So where would there possibly be, as Dave had mentioned about condos, where his uncle lives, there's a great demand in Lucan, a really great demand in Lucan. At that time, when those are built, there will be a lot of seniors who want just a condo like where Dave's uncle lives. Is there any possibility that those would be built rather than the great big ugly 2-3 story townhouses? Jason?
Through the chair, what I would note is there's nothing in the proposed bylaw or zoning by the applicant that would limit it to a 1-story development. But it's not to say that they could not consider doing something like that. It would be based on council's consideration of the zoning, what they thought was an appropriate height for the development, and then what the future approvals would be in terms of zoning, which would really guide what the potential product at the end of the day could be on that portion of lands.
Okay, so in total, for all the building, how many acres is that?
Through the chair, it's just over, or just under, I believe, 38 acres for the entirety of that parcel, or 2 parcels.
Oh, for the entire 2 parcels is 38 acres?
Through the chair, yes, that's correct. So there's only, of the almost 200 acres of land, there's only approximately just under 38 acres that are within the current settlement boundary, which means that's the only portion that can be developed at this point in time.
Okay, so you've got all that, all the bush and all the acreage behind is staying.
It's through the chair, yes, so that's correct. At this point in time, it's outside of the settlement boundary and would not be able to be developed.
Okay, all right. Okay, well, I don't think I had any other questions other than I think the sewage plant capacity. Other than the protecting agricultural land, when I sold this farm, I thought it was going to be kept as agricultural land, but that didn't happen. So I feel bad about that, but can't change progress, I guess. So not happy about it, but what can I do? So thank you very much for your time. I think you answered a lot of my questions anyway. So thank you.
Thanks, Sheila. Is your daughter there with you? Did she want to add something? I did have her down as
yeah, I'm not sure if she did or she just wanted to find a bit more information about it.
Okay.
Are you there, Laurie?
No, I don't believe she is anymore.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, I think she just had an interest, it's kind of her home.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Sheila. And then I've got Pat Ryan as well.
Thanks, Mayor Kathy. And Merry Christmas to all.
Yes, Merry Christmas.
I've submitted most of my, or I've submitted written comments that you guys have seen. And I just have a few other questions. I'm quite actually pleased and heartened listening to some of the comments by the councillors and by you, Mayor Kathy, concerning the quality of the build and just, the loss of small town feel possibly now, and that we don't want to let that happen any further. And I do like, again, the idea of the urban policy or urban design that Dan was referring to. If any way could be incorporated as well into this development would be ideal. There's no question about it. Just a few things real quick. Would the updates, this would all coincide, I'm assuming, with the update to Sainsbury concerning turn lanes, sidewalks, of that nature?
Are you talking like that's going to happen, that the county's got planned in the next few years?
Well, I'm not sure, Kathy, what the town has planned or the county has planned in the next few years, whether that involves this development as well.
No, it does not involve, maybe I should let Dan speak, but it was funny. I was just at a county council meeting today and the county engineer presented his roads capital plan for the next 5 years. And so, there is work to be done on Sainsbury, and that I think was slated for 2022. I'll look for Ron to nod his head. I think that's what they were looking for. And at that point in time, there's hope that as a Lucan Biddulph municipality, we would do the urbanization of the sidewalks and that sort of thing. How far down that goes at that point with the work being done is hard to say. Again, that would be a discussion that I'm thinking as I look to Dan, as we work further down Saintsbury, what we could do, work with the developer as to adding sidewalks and that sort of thing on Saintsbury.
Thank you. I guess one last question would be, and it's more concerning the process. As the development, proceeds and nears the final draft approval, will there be opportunities for future public, review or input?
That's a question for Dan, maybe.
Through the chair, sorry. The question was additional input?
Yeah, further opportunity for input. Is there, like, from the public?
So technically speaking, the meeting that we're having here tonight is the public open house for this particular application. So this would fulfill the planning or provincial planning requirement for the public meeting. However, with that said, we certainly are still open to receiving any comments from the community, from the county's perspective and from the township's perspective. There will be a follow-up meeting where we will present a report. Generally, when it comes to applications of this nature, we'd likely do so with another public planning meeting, just given the scale of what's being proposed in this particular situation. So I would say that it would be likely that there would be a future meeting where a decision would be made that would also include a public open house component to receive comments.
Is that good, Pat?
Excuse me, Madam Mayor?
Yep, Jeff?
Yeah, can I just add just a little bit of a comment, as there seems to be a few comments, and even the deputy mayor. I think one of the things as we move along, it is up to Lucan Biddulph to design the urbanization of Saintsbury. So as we go through from where we'll be coming out of coming off Richmond and moving up, we'll be doing it in stages. So it won't be done all at once. It'll be done in stages as we go. But I think that's we will be looking at for input from the public, from council, what we want to see on Saintsbury for sidewalks, street lighting, that sort of thing for urbanizing. And then we in turn are collecting DC charges from the new development to pay for these upgrades. So I think there's room there as we move along over the next year, when we start planning this and engineering it, that we'll be looking for comments on Saintsbury in particular, on that urbanization. So that kind of goes back to Mr. Ryan's comments about Saintsbury and the deputy mayors about sort of like a crosswalk and that sort of thing. Those things have to get planned in on our side as we go through, and then we'll collect DC funds to pay for that upgrades.
Do you have any further comments, Pat?
No, I think that's pretty much it. I did have a discussion with Jason at the virtual open house, and we had a discussion concerning the houses, if this proposed development goes through, that will be backing onto Saintsbury. And again, from aesthetic point of view, these yards will all be facing, and I believe if it does happen the way it is right now, we're looking at 17 backyards. So at the time, I discussed with Jason putting a aesthetically pleasing privacy fence up, separating Saintsbury from the backyards of these homes. And
Jason responded and said that would be considered in the design process. And I think it wasn't an affirmative answer. So I guess that's why I asked if there would be additional input from the public concerning various subjects that may arise, but that being one of them. So anyways, that's my comment. That's something that I will certainly pursue with council too.
Great. Okay, well, thanks for those comments. And I think as Dan said, you know, he's still accepting comments from the public. So certainly to all of the public that participated this evening, if there's something that you think about or something, you know, that comes to mind, please make sure that you submit that, because he's still accepting those comments. So there we are.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Dave, Dan Fitzgerald's had his hand up.
Okay.
So just like Madam Mayor, if I could just make a comment on just the last thing that Mr. Ryan said. So yeah, generally speaking, when it comes to subdivisions of this nature, because it's located on a county road, standard practice of the county engineer is to require a noise study as a condition of draft plan approval. And typically that is going to identify that some type of noise barrier, likely in this case, just a board-on-board fence would be required if it's a scenario where private outdoor amenity space is backlotting onto Saintsbury line. I would say this though, from a planning perspective, what I would rather see as a planner in this particular case is front lotting onto Saintsbury line. And I don't mean front lotting in terms of providing access. I would like to see a different style of product provided that allows for back access where the unit faces the street, but you still access from the rear of the property so that there's no driveway access onto Saintsbury line, because that's important from the county's perspective. I think at the end of the day, that achieves a much better result from an urban design, especially when you're looking at Saintsbury line and what the potential development is in that corridor, to have people facing the street and activating it, as well as if council is going to have consideration for urbanizing that street and adding sidewalks in, this is a great opportunity to provide that activation on the actual street, to have those units face there as opposed to just the backyard of someone's house with a fence. So it's just food for thought for council consideration.
Thanks for adding that, Jan. I think that's a great comment. Actually, it's funny when Mr. Ryan mentioned the backing onto Saintsbury, that's what exactly I wrote down was, could the houses, could they face like flip? So I'm glad that you brought that up, because that was exactly what I had written down. So thanks for that. I did have one more comment just to make. I don't know. We have so many discussions over the years about accessibility issues and how, maintenance or minimum standards are changing. The width of sidewalks, has that changed from what it was? And again, obviously that would be a consideration to make sure that they are up to accessible standards, right?
Through the chair, I might defer to Jeff, just because I'm not exactly sure what the standard is in Lucan Biddulph in terms of your engineering design guidelines. But what I would say is that ADOA, which is the guiding document for accessibility standards, would now point to a minimum size of 1.5 meters for a sidewalk.
Okay. You would agree with that, Jeff?
Yeah, just to Madam Mayor, Dan's exactly right. So there is a set standard that's something that's set out in the province of Ontario, and we can do that. And maybe one of the things as we move forward, as we've been discussing here all the way along is maybe some addition to the architectural component of the subdivision. So, I mean, we could probably look at whether we have a bike lane or a wider sidewalk that would promote even more, especially on the main roads, such as your Gilmore. You certainly wouldn't look at your back, your cul-de-sacs and that sort of thing. But there's certainly room there for to promote walking and accessibility, particularly on the main road. So I'll definitely write that down and take that into account.
Great. Thanks for that, Jeff. Okay, any other last questions or comments from councillors at this point? Councillor Regan, did you have another question or comment?
I did. Thank you, Madam Mayor. No, I just was going to support Mr. Ryan's comment about the aesthetically pleasing fence. I thought that was something that we needed to look at. So I was just going to bring that up. Somebody else got to that, but thank you for that.
Great. Any other last comments or questions from council at this point? Okay, so if I go on, the recommendation that Dan has put on his plan is just to accept the report for information. And I'm fairly confident in speaking to Tina earlier, we can do that in this public meeting setting. We can just have a motion to accept for information. So if I could have a mover and seconder for that. Councillor Regan and Councillor Westman. And all opposed? And that's carried. And I guess I would, before we reconvene our regular meeting, I guess I would just ask again, Dan, what would the next steps be? I mean, obviously the applicant and the developers have heard a number of comments, and obviously they'll go back to their plan. I'm sure there's many more discussions to be had, but just wondering what the next steps would be.
So through you, Madam Mayor, to all council. So with respect to the application, in this case, what we would be working towards is, an acceptable plan of draft plan for subdivision to bring back to council for consideration of adoption. So in this particular case, it's likely that we're going to go back and review some of the engineering solutions that are proposed, as well as comments that we've received in terms of the potential for consideration of parkland, design standards within the existing infrastructure, as well as lot layouts and diversity of different product. We'll have those discussions now with the developer, and once we're at a point where we think that we can endorse an application, or the developer wants to proceed with what they've proposed, we'll bring that back to council for consideration with a recommendation.
Okay, that's great. Thanks very much for that. And I do want to thank the applicant. Obviously, it's an exciting proposal for our community, and we certainly look forward to this as it unfolds. I do need a motion to reconvene our regular council meeting. If I can get a mover and seconder. Deputy Mayor and Councillor Westman. All opposed? And that's carried. Before we move on, I might just ask if everybody would mind having maybe a 2 or 3 minute break, just so we can stretch our legs. I know I've got to get another glass of water, but if we can just take a 2 minute break, that would be great. And then we'll come back and we'll continue on with the council meeting.
while we're waiting for everyone to come back, I just thought I'd throw in a little astronomy thing. On the 21st, which is the winter solstice, there's going to be a conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn. It's going to look like one big star. A lot of people are calling it the Christmas star. So it's kind of a neat little thing, little bit of magic for Christmas. So there you go.
We all need something to celebrate in 2020. Okay. I know Councillor Regan's not back on yet. Oh, there he is. All right. See, I just said that. Okay, so we might as well keep moving now. I appreciate everyone having the break. All right, so no more delegations, but we'll move on to the adoption of the minutes. So you've got the council minutes for December 1st in front of you. And if there is nothing that needed to be amended, I would ask for a mover and a seconder to approve the December 1st minutes as circulated. Councillor Westman and Councillor Regan. And all opposed? And that's carried. Moving on to the business arising. There is the note about the Conservation Authority Act, and there is a motion later on the resolution that we spoke about at our previous meeting. Is there anything that needed to be added to business arising that's not there? Okay, then we will go to our correspondence. There's a number of items there. Nothing has been highlighted by our staff at this stage. Did council have any correspondence that they wanted to get pulled, that they had questions on, needed to have a discussion on? Okay, seeing none, then I would ask for a mover and a seconder to accept the communications for information. Councillor Masterakis and Councillor Regan. All opposed? And that's accepted. Thank you very much. Moving on to committee reports. CEDC. Lisa, anything?
Yes, I just wanted to kind of update everyone about our first annual lighting of the lights at Margaret Street Park last weekend. It went really well. And thank Paul Smith and his staff, along with the Lions, for supporting that quick little project we pulled together. And we received many comments of how people really loved that, the lighting, and appreciated it. So I think we'll just hopefully build on that success next year and create a whole kind of a weekend full of festivities in Lucan Biddulph. At the same time, that weekend we had a kind of a festive Saturday for local businesses where we encourage people to shop local. There are some ballot draws that were done, and I had well over 500 ballots submitted. So that's actually really great to hear. And we did that draw the other day. And yeah, the end of our other parts, our social media, we had a shop local for the last 2 months, highlighting our local businesses. And that wraps up this week as well. So that's everything. Thank you.
Any questions for Lisa on that? Councillor Regan.
Hi, Lisa. I just maybe you're the right person to ask. How did we do on the Santa Claus Parade food drive? Do you know?
I actually didn't hear back any numbers. Mayor Kathy might know that one.
So don't know the numbers, and not necessarily sure we're going to have the numbers because there was so much food collected that a lot of it is going to be stored in the Lion shed. And then they will deliver it over to the food bank as needed. So that final tally might be a while in coming, but it was a tremendous success. Lucan Biddulph needs to be congratulated for the donations. Certainly the fire department and the Lions Club, you know, they'd never done this before where they hit every street. So they kind of put out a timeline that they thought it would take them to get through Lucan and then make their way over to Granton. They were a long time in Lucan. So congratulations and thank you to everyone involved in that.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm glad it worked out well.
Absolutely. Okay, Blue Water.
Nothing to report, but which is legit. We haven't had a meeting. We're not meeting till the new year. Just a reminder that the December 26th and January 2nd, have your stuff out by 7 a.m. So they will be collecting the day after Christmas, then the day after New Year's. Thank you.
And we'll make sure that we put that out on social media again, but good reminder. Lake Huron, yeah, we had I think, yes, we did have a meeting since our last meeting, and we elected a chair, and there was nothing to report back that was that would impact us at this point. Fire boards, you've got the 2 sets of minutes in front of us. I don't know if there was anything that wanted to be, anybody had any questions on. Ron had anything to add to that? Nope. Okay, ABCA and Upper Thames, Councillor Westman.
Okay, yeah, we didn't have a Upper Thames board meeting this month, but we do have a ABCA coming up on Thursday. Obviously, the topic under discussion continues to be the changes to the Conservation Act and the implications it's going to have on our efforts in both authorities. There's been a lot of upheaval at a provincial level over the last little while. Some resignations and what have you with the provincial CA. So it's hard to say where this is going to go, but I think we're making our best effort to push back. And that's about all I have to report at this time. I'll have a report for the next meeting on the forthcoming meeting on Thursday.
Okay. Thank you for that. Parks and Recreation.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. We had a meeting on December 9th. So the minutes will be in the next council package, as there wasn't enough time to get on this agenda. We had one member, Mark Nixon, who's decided to step down from his position on the committee, and we thank him for his time that he's committed to the committee. So we will be posting that application in the coming future shortly to replace his spot on the committee. We have a meeting coming up January 6th, and we have the committee members currently working on some brainstorming about key amenities and locations, and reviewing, assisting with comments on review of the Parks and Rec master plan, as suggested as a 2020 review.
Great, thanks for that. Okay, moving on to staff reports. Ron.
I got too many different mice I'm working here. So thank you very much, Madam Mayor. We already talked about the Santa Claus food drive. So thank you to all the parties, the Optimists, the Lions, the fire departments. Excellent work by all parties. The point number 2, actually, you did talk about that as well, Madam Mayor. The Middlesex London moved to the red effective Monday, December 14th. And what does that mean? I would really urge everybody to make use of the Middlesex London Health Unit website. It can be found, just Google Middlesex London Health Unit and it'll pop up. You can easily find it. So that has been a treasure trove of information for guidelines and things like that for businesses and as well as for us as a municipality. So urge a lot of people to make use of that website. The County of Middlesex is hosting a countywide Zoom meeting on the 14th of January to provide an update on upper tier activities. I think I might be stealing the mayor's thunder here, but I believe I forwarded everybody the link. So we urge you to register for that Zoom meeting. And Madam Mayor, there is one more meeting, I believe, on the 21st, and I'll let you, because I don't know too many details about that one. At last week's countywide CAO meeting, it was noted by both Thames Centre and Strathroy Caradoc that they both have experienced very, very large increases in their insurance premiums to the tune of about 40%. And that's a very large number. So it's having some shock waves across the lower tiers. Both of those municipalities did admit that they obviously have had some claims in the last little bit that would have an impact on it. We ourselves experienced a 14% increase at the last renewal, which was the 1st of September. So I think we best hold on to our seats and see what happens this coming year. But I think all the climate change and natural disasters are having an impact. It was also mentioned by the county CAO that the depressed bond market is also having an impact on the amount of money that the insurance companies are making. So, and the last item I had was the holiday hours. So we are closed. The municipal office is closed Thursday, December 24th, Christmas Eve at noon. We're closed Friday for the Christmas Day. And then we're closed on the following Monday, which is December 28th for the Boxing Day holiday. And then we're open the 29th and 30th. And then New Year's Eve, Thursday, December 31st. Again, we close at noon. And then Friday is the 1st of January and the office is closed. So the following Monday, January the 4th, everybody's back to work and we're happily into 2021, leaving behind 2020. So that's all I had. I believe Tina has one report on the extension for the mask bylaw. Tina, did you want to just quickly review that one?
Thanks, Ron. Through you, Madam Mayor. So we do have an extension to our face mask bylaw included. There was unfortunately an expiry date. Well, I shouldn't say unfortunately. At the time, we didn't really realize how long this would continue. But the bylaw does expire on December 31st. And although it is mandated by the province currently, the bylaw just gives our staff and enforcement officers extra tools kind of in their pocket to use. So we are recommending that we extend it to continue until our current state of emergency is lifted. If anyone had any questions regarding that.
Doesn't look like it.
I think so. Great, and that's all I had.
That's all you've got? Okay, any questions for Ron or Tina? Maybe before I move on, before I forget, I will mention the January 21st meeting that the county is hosting. So the January 14th meeting that we're hosting is going to look like the usual Middlesex County visit that the warden and the CAO usually have with the partner municipalities. And last year, you'll recall, we did that. We did it in, I think we did it in an afternoon. And the department heads from the county joined us. And so the 14th will look the same way. And then the January 21st meeting is a roundtable discussion. And we did that last year as well, or I get last year. We did that in the spring as well. And that's when we had Minister Clark and we had MPPs Monty McNaughton and Jeff Yurk and Ernie Hardeman join us. So that's what that roundtable will be. And I can't share with you who is joining us, but I think that everybody will be pleased with who is joining us and who has confirmed involvement. So I think that will be a really meaningful discussion that we have. And so I would ask that you mark the 14th and the 21st, and those are actually evening events. So this time. Moving on then to finance. Catherine.
Thank you. So the one report I have in front of you is just, I think we mentioned before that we have this, the COVID-19 Resilience Infrastructure Funding, or we call it ISIP, under ISIP. And then Lucan Biddulph allocated $100,000. And we can use that for one capital project in one of the 4 categories as I listed in the report. And the deadline for application is next Monday for this. So we've been thinking about this a lot, and staff is proposing to build a sand salt storage shed at the public workshop, and we think that would be eligible for this funding. So, in the past or currently we have a sharing arrangement with the MTO at their facility, but we figured under COVID we need to end that arrangement so we can have some physical distancing and not have to share the equipment and such. So that was all things we discussed in our capital budget meeting as well. So that's the project that we want to put forward. And that's a recommendation that you see this report for information and to allow us to go ahead and submit the application using that project. If you have any questions I can try to answer, or Jeff might have you more technical questions about the project itself.
Okay. Any questions for Catherine or Jeff on that recommendation? Okay. Is that all you've got, Catherine, or is there anything else?
That's all I have. Thanks.
Great. Thanks. Any questions for Catherine this time? Okay. Moving on. Anything else for planning, Dan?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, to councillors. One more thing before I leave. So there's council may notice there's a bylaw attached to the agenda, and it's specific to the Melbeck property, which is at 34237 Mitchell Line. So as council may recall, back in June 2020, we heard consent application for a surplus farmhouse dwelling B5-2020, as well as the corresponding zoning bylaw amendment 03-2020, in which council had voted to support the severance as well as the zoning bylaw amendment applications. So the bylaw that is attached for council consideration today is just the recommendation, the rezoning recommendation that was previously passed by council, and that's to rezone the severed lands to a site. Oh, let me just pull it up here. To surplus dwelling zone, and then the remnant lands, which would be the agricultural lands, to a site-specific A3-12 zone. So if council has any questions, I can certainly answer those now.
Great. Any questions for Dan on that? Okay. All right. Moving on. Public Works. Jeff.
Well, Kathy, Mayor Kathy.
Yep.
Separate question before Dan goes. I had a resident ask because of the horrible thing that happened under the collapse of the building with Brock Development, which is, I believe is the same developer as Old Oak property or Old Clover Village. The early stages, is there any comment? Where are we at as a municipality? Obviously, there's nothing we do or at this point, but do you know anything, Dan, or process in situations like this?
So through the chair, unfortunately, no, I don't have much experience when it comes to this particular type of situation. My understanding is that generally speaking, there's usually a pretty thorough forensic investigation, usually forensic engineering investigation as to what occurred and what happened. And that certainly will be ongoing to figure out what has happened in this particular situation. Obviously, it's very tragic, and Lucan does have a connection in that the developer of that particular project does have a proposal in the township, but I don't think it's I don't think there's any flags to need to worry about any of that at this point in time.
Thank you, Dan.
Okay, any other questions for Dan? Okay, moving on to Public Works. Jeff.
Madam Mayor, I got a memo coming to council through the Public Works managers through the county. We've been discussing COVID, and you always, in this sort of business, you got to be prepared for the worst case scenario. And the worst case scenario would be that if a work department did have COVID come through, what would happen to the road clearing. And so easily all the managers said, well, we'd all pitch in and we'd all make sure everybody got through a snowstorm or through an event until things could be worked out. Having said that, though, there has to be some sort of arrangement just so things are laid out. And Chris Traney at the county with the legal counsel through the county developed a bit of a resolution which is attached to this to how to lay out if a requirement, if another municipality did have to come and help with winter maintenance. This isn't an open service agreement. It's meant just for the winter season. It's meant for around COVID. Each municipality is still responsible to do their own maintenance, but it's one of those ones off. If we did need help, we could institute a process where we could go and assist our neighbors. So I think it's pretty straightforward that way, but there may be some questions to council on sort of how this could play out. So I'll open it for questions.
Okay, thanks for that, Jeff. And just for a point of interest, we actually at County Council this afternoon passed the memo, the memorandum of understanding at the county level. So,
and Madam Mayor, just so I follow, yeah. So each municipality that's participating, and I don't know of any that are not at this point, unless their council decides not to. That each one will pass their own resolution, and that way then we're all in agreement and we're all on the same page. So yeah, I think Chris said his was going today. So
any questions for Jeff on that one? Okay. What else do you have, Jeff?
That's about it. The only other thing I just and I think council knows that the Terry Hickson Memorial signs up. We're not having any sort of big ceremony, but I think it looks great, and I've heard a couple of comments, good comments about it. So other than that, that's just a good thing to end off this season, and just we'll head for the Christmas season. Wish everybody a Merry Christmas.
Great, thanks so much, Jeff. Any questions for Jeff? Okay, Paul, Parks and Rec.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Before you, I have a memo regarding watershed low impact projects that's been approached by the ABCA. The ABCA Wetlands Department has reached out to the Parks and Rec Department and Public Works to discuss potential project opportunities after we had our initial conversation regarding the floating island wetlands. Since then, funding has become available through the federal government, and funds would be applied through a habitat stewardship program. We met with the ABCA at our most recreational active, largest stormwater management site near Campanella. And we reviewed potential projects that could reduce development impact using passive recreational land. This site could serve as an educational and demonstration land for future stormwater management sites that could be implemented into development policies and demonstrating of low impact community programs that residents could participate on their own private residence is a key component of this. The ABCA would like to demonstrate to residents what they could apply to the ABCA for funding to do projects on their own property to reduce the impact of stormwater management. Part of this, the goal to this is project is to protect the habitat for the black red horse. It's a federally listed species at risk that only exists in a handful of watersheds in Canada, one of those being the Little Asable, which is just north of Lucan here. The fish needs clear, non-polluted water, and holding back water upstream allows water to slow down and filter through plants and soil. That helps improve water quality downstream in the river. And there's many other species at risk, as we saw last week presented to us through, 2 weeks ago presented to us by Mary, including the northern sunfish, rainbow mussel, wavy rayed lamp mussel, as well as various turtle species. Birds and insects, including pollinators, also rely on healthy habitats. It's important to further enhance and provide valuable areas for people to play, walk, and run in our community, ride and spend time outdoors with family, and to help mitigate the effects of climate change, flash flooding, and reduce the amount of water ponding on surfaces such as driveways, sidewalks, roads, which will result in less need for road sand salt, and it can save money and help reduce the environment by removing excess need for filtration on water. Before you, there's a good quantified example provided by the University of Guelph that demonstrates the cost reduction of removing key sediments in water. And I'll also include in the report, I won't go through every single detail as it's been a long meeting, but very important programs and projects that can be applied to our wetlands as well as on people's properties, including rain gardens, bioswales, rain barrels, buffer shrubs, removal of phragmites and a replacement with native species to improve parkland and to create a more beneficial peeling habitat around our ponds. Floating island wetlands is also something we discussed at capital budget. And there's lots of opportunities here for educational components. The ABCA is very keen on the idea with the proximity of Wilberforce Public School that they could have a nice walking connection to good educational projects that they can demonstrate to the students, as well as the potential of the Lucan Biddulph Community Forest, if they could eventually connect the two through trails, that they could provide a nice educational area within Lucan Biddulph. What the ABCA is asking for is they are applying for a $30,000 grant through Habitat Stewardship Program. They will be matching the $30,000, and they are asking the Council of Lucan Biddulph for a letter of support to commit matching $30,000. It is important to know this is over a 3-year period. Part of that $30,000 can be work in kind by municipal staff on projects, and up to 50% of the project cost for any of the projects implemented. It's also important to note that any grants that the Township of Lucan Biddulph were to successfully apply for would be applied towards this $30,000, such as the one we have already applied for the Tree Canada grant. Currently, as we saw in the last council meeting, our Lucan Biddulph falls under D for poor for forest covering and C fair for groundwater quality. Key actions listed on the report card are for us to maximize our forest interior by connecting small woodlots to large tracts and squaring up existing woodlots by planting trees along the forest edge. Managing stormwater by installing rain gardens, rain barrels, and watching for the Yellowfish Road program done in Lucan. And continue to evaluate the cumulative effects of nutrient management planning at the watershed scale. As funding has become available quite quickly, the deadline for this application is December 18th, 2020. And I have to thank Rosalind Chang, Angela Van Niekerk, and Mary Valise, as they've been integral in providing quite a lot of information that's been included in this report. And it is staff's recommendation that the Council of Lucan Biddulph direct staff to compose a letter of support for the ABCA to apply for a Habitat Stewardship Program funding with a commitment of $30,000 in kind, municipal staff wages, and up to 50% of the project costs for projects implemented on municipal land over a 3-year period. It's important to note alignment to the strategic plan. There's quite a few key categories that this can fall under. Developing strategies for managing growth, identify new infrastructure priorities and prepare strategies to secure funding, actively support and promote physical activity in healthy communities through participation in local and regional programs, and create and implement a community beautification strategy. Attractive, vibrant, and functional spaces can improve community well-being and pride, catalyze economic growth, and facilitate cultural and tourism opportunity. All of these projects, they have an important function, as well as they can be utilized to beautify the areas that we're having passive recreation in.
Okay, thanks for that report, Paul. Questions or comments from council? Councillor Regan.
Hi, thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, Paul, I'm just wondering how much, if they get it, the Canada grant, the Canada Tree Grant, I think you said?
The Canada Tree Grant is the one we applied for the community forest. That already is $10,000 we've applied for. So that could be considered as part of our $30,000 contribution already over the 3-year period.
Oh, great. Thank you very much, Paul. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Any other questions from council? Councillor Mastarakis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The budget-wise, how does this fit into your budget or cash flows? And maybe that's Catherine's bailiwick as well. Where's the money coming from? Are you decreasing something else for next year, or where are we getting the dough?
Catherine, would you like to answer that, or should?
Well, for the first year, if it's 10,000 per year over 3 years, we put 10,000 in the budget, and then if we're successful for any grants, we can apply towards that. Otherwise, we incorporate into the budget, and those would how that falls would be determined during our budget talks. If it has to come out of the levy or reserves or those kinds of things, that's when the decisions would be made. But we'd spread it out and have 10,000 a year would be my suggestion, and then apply grants to it.
Thank you, Catherine. So Paul, you would see this as one of your higher priority items. That's why you're looking to put it in the budget, then, I assume.
I think this is a valuable opportunity for us to work with the ABCA, and I would highly recommend it for it's a key educational component as well as a good benefit for recreation.
Thank you, Paul.
Other questions, comments? I guess I am a little confused by what we're being asked for. So we're asking to commit $30,000 in funds over a 3-year period, but that could cover in-kind municipal wages. So I'm assuming you'd have your staff working on whatever project was being done, and their time could be considered towards the 30,000. And then on top of that, we're being asked for up to 50% of the project cost. So to me, like what's that dollar figure? If they're getting $30,000 from a grant and the ABCA is getting $30,000, that's $60,000. So then on top of the in-kind, are we going to be asked for another $30,000?
If I may, through you, Madam Mayor, no, the total amount is $30,000 over 3 years, but what our contribution in that $30,000 is 50% of the project costs as well as staff time wages in kind. So the amount we receive would be, and staff time would determine which projects we would do and to what extent for value. So our total cost would be $30,000. The money wouldn't be exchanging hands for staff time. It would just be in kind. So we would log all the staff time that would be dedicated to projects, and that would just be noted in the grant reporting.
And then I guess my question then is the sort of projects that they're doing, I assume would be spring and summer projects. Like just from what they described as to the sort of things that they're looking at. Do you have the kind of staff time to be able to give to that project on top of everything else that you have to do?
Yes, we have staff that's dedicated to special projects generally in spring and summer, besides the grass cutting. On a normal year, we would have a summer student as well to offset the grass cutting, which makes more staff available. Yeah, we definitely, and we do a lot of work, especially one of the projects here is something we're already looking at, is trying to fix the erosion that's developed around the pond. That was one of our key projects we wanted to do anyways. And if we were to install a buffer to stop the erosion itself. It would be instead of us doing groundwork, we'd be working with them to plant shrubs.
So I guess to further to Councillor Masterakis's questions, where's the money coming from? And I guess, I mean, I understand the need, the grant deadline is December 18th, so the need to make this decision tonight. I guess I would say to council, when we have a budget discussion, I mean, that would be something that we need to consider. Is this going to be potentially $30,000 extra dollars over 3 years, or are we going to be taking $30,000 away from something else? And I don't think that we should lose sight of that during the budget discussion if we go ahead with this project. So that's all I'm saying at this stage. I mean, I think it's great. I mean, you know, ABCA, they came and presented it. I guess I get a little concerned when these sort of things are brought to our attention and the deadline is 3 days from now. And ideally, could we have had this discussion at the beginning of December when the ABCA presented to us? And you know, the timing is of concern of mine. Not to say that this isn't a valid thing, and I think that there would be great benefit to the community for all the reasons as you laid out in your report. But I think going forward, we need to be mindful of deadlines and you know, of making these decisions outside of budget.
If I may, through you, Madam Mayor, absolutely. And this is a conversation we had started, and there was no funding, but they just reached out kind of to last minute to say that funding had become available and time that they had been made more available for projects, and they felt that it would be a missed opportunity if we didn't at least try.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from council at this time? Councillor Masterakis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To your point, that was my comment as well. If this is a priority, in my view, it's coming off your budget for next year, not in addition to the budget, was my thought process. But thank you.
Okay. So I know that there is not a motion prepared. So I guess I would be looking to council to give some sort of direction to Paul as to how to proceed with his. You've got his recommendation in front of you. And I guess I'd be looking for council to give some sort of direction. Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I'll make the motion to accept Paul's recommendation to proceed.
Okay. And a seconder, Councillor Regan. Did you have a comment, Councillor Westman, or you were just, okay. Any further discussion on that motion to accept Paul's recommendation? Okay, all opposed? And that's carried. Thanks. Do you have anything else, Paul?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. Just want to keep council informed as we've made the transition into red. It went very well. I'm pleased to say our hockey association is one of the only hockey associations that has not gone on hiatus. There's North Middlesex is another, and there aren't many others that have decided to. And I think our residents are quite happy that we are doing what we can within the guidelines to still offer some sort of opportunities for the children to get out and be active. I'd also like to announce that I happily announce that the Grant and Park Committee has decided to contribute $4,500 towards the new playgrounds in Grant and Park as they're due for replacement and capital budget. And I thank them very much. They've been a huge part of beautifying that park since my time, since I started here, that the park has changed dramatically. And it's a lot thanks to all their hard work that they've done in there. Other than that, I think we're good.
Okay. Might just add that I think the boards are up as well in the pavilion in the Granton Park. So all we need is some cold weather. And
we're very hopeful of that.
Any questions for Paul? Okay, did you cover everything under the CEDC, Lisa, or you've got more?
Yeah.
For economic, okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to briefly mention that the Rural Economic Development Grant is back open from OMAFRA, so I'll just be looking into that to see if there's any opportunities for us for 2021. And we used that this past year for our murals and some other couple little projects. One that's still coming from Murals and Metal, the giant shamrock, is being built as we speak, but we have until like February to get that all finished up. The Mayor's Honor Roll nominations finalized this week. So if you want to reach out to anyone you know that might want to submit a nomination, please do so by Friday. Exciting news, the new Huron Shores Transit System started up on Monday. We have one stop in Lucan. If you're heading, if I want to say south towards London, it's beside the community center. And if you're heading north towards Exeter, it's over by the opposite side by Lucan Medical Center over on that end. We wanted to make sure that it was a safe place for people crossing. So that's what kind of where it went there, because of the pedestrian crossing and just ease of access for the bus route. It's free until January 10th. And like I said, it's Route 2. There's more information online, and there's a newsletter going out tomorrow as well that maybe didn't hit everyone that was on social media, that we've already put it out there, but obviously the newsletter will hit more people. We have invited the coordinator to attend the council meeting on January 19th. Tina reached out to her, so thank you. So she'll come and do a presentation on the new system that they're running. And I think, yeah, that's it for now. Thank you.
Any questions for Lisa? Okay, moving on to councillors' comments. Councillor Regan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a while ago, I just had I'd mentioned about sort of the cleaning up behind the lion shed. There were some things over there, and I just had reason to be over there earlier today, and I just noticed how absolutely wonderful it was. So I wanted to say thank you to Paul and Jeff and their staff for doing such an amazing job. Thank you very much for doing that. I just wanted to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, because I may not see any of you. And I've got to call into my people, and 2021 is going to be a lot better. So I got it covered for us. Thank you.
You realize now that we are recording, and that was live on YouTube. So it's all on you now, Councillor Regan.
Absolutely. I got it.
Any other comments? I have a couple. Lisa mentioned the RED grant, and as everybody knows, we've used that grant over the years for our murals in that are downtown. And I haven't had opportunity because the last meeting, because of the weather, I was at home. So I wasn't able to share this, but when we unveiled the mural at the Wilberforce mural, I guess was that back in November? Everything seems so long ago. The artist that we've commissioned, Andy Gallay, he's done 3 murals for us. And when you speak to him, he has a bit of a soft spot for Lucan Biddulph and for the work that he's done in our community. And with that in mind, the day that he was here to unveil the Wilberforce mural, he made a donation to our community. And I wanted to show everybody, I don't know how well you're going to be able to see it, but he presented us with this piece that we will hang in the township office. And he says it's to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the Battle of Vimy Ridge, April 12th, 1917. He painted this on April 12th, 2017. So certainly it is an incredible piece. Seeing it in person, it's quite emotional. I know it's one of Lisa's favorites, and we will certainly find a spot to hang it in the township office. So wanted to make sure that all of you have seen it, since we can't get into the office as much as we have in the past. One question, I should have brought it up actually, was Jeff, just to kind of put on your, to-do list, not to-do list, but just to put out there. We had a presentation at County Council today from Mark Brown, the weed inspector with the county, and he did a presentation on Phragmites. And in your spare time, if you go back and you look at that presentation, it was very interesting because they did a test plot, and I don't know where they did it. I think they did it maybe in the Southwest Middlesex area, of how to maybe get rid of Phragmites. And they did 2 different types of applications with some weed control, and they think that they've got some they've got some results that were quite successful. It's certainly not inexpensive. And so they're going to be looking at this. They'll be doing some other test sites, obviously, as long as conditions are satisfactory. But it might be something that, if they're moving into our area doing Phragmite control on county roads, that it might be something that we might want to look at doing in tandem with them. I suspect that the county road, because Mark worked with the county roads department, obviously. So I would imagine you would hear something from your peers in the county roads department, but I just kind of wanted to put that out there that they've been working on that, because I know that's quite a concern throughout many communities.
Yeah, and just, Madam Mayor, that's great news, because although we do have some issues up in our municipality, and in fact, we had to go out and trim back some of the intersections due to visibility problems with them. And I think, just to mention to everybody, the reason why this is such a problem is the root system doesn't die with normal control. And it continues. So you can knock it down, you can spray it, you can do whatever you want, but the roots grow right back. And Southwest is in trouble down there. They've got some real issues. So we're doing okay, but this is great news, because I probably had about 4 complaints last year, and there's really not a lot we can do other than every year going out and cutting it. So that's wonderful news, and Mark will, because he knows he's getting complaints all over the county. So that, to me, that's a real good, that's going to help us in the long run. So that's good news. I will look that up.
Yeah. No, I think I can remember years ago this being brought up at council, and kind of it was a whole doom and gloom, and there was nothing we could do, sort of thing. And at least now they feel that maybe that there is maybe some control out there, or he feels that maybe they've been able to find some control. So that's good. The other thing I wanted to mention is it's a pilot project that kicked off on December 1st, and it is a joint project with the Lucan Library and the Middlesex County Library Association, the Canadian Mental Health Association, and a group out of Parkwood Hospital called Minds, which is geared to support those youth in crisis with mental health issues. So I think you will remember last year there was a huge focus in our community on the mental health and well-being of our youth in particular. And there was a group that started meeting and brought in a number of different supports from across agencies, from a bunch of different networks. We met in the library, representatives from OPP, from Canadian Mental Health, Addiction Services, all of these. What could we do? What sort of supports were needed? That sort of thing. the group that was a real grassroots program called, and they coined themselves Lucan Talks. That was how they, the group called themselves. And there was great discussions, and there was all sorts of talk about where there were gaps and how those gaps could be filled, and real momentum was happening. And then of course COVID happened, and all of that sort of thing just kind of fell to the side. Well, I have to tell you that Lee Robinson and Doug Warnock, who Doug is the librarian in Park Hill, and obviously Lee is our librarian. The two of them were really inspired, and through their connections have been able to secure some funding for this pilot project. And the posters are up at the arena. Paul's got them. And it is a partnership, as I say, with Canadian Mental Health Association and Star Taxi, where youth in crisis can access a taxi if they need, and they'll get into the crisis center at Canadian Mental Health Association on Huron Street, and there'll be no charge for transportation. They chose Lucan, obviously, because of the discussions that have been going on and the concern for the youth in our community, as I say, the discussions that have been going on. So who knows where this will lead, but they're quite excited about, the potential of being able to reach out to those in crisis. It's been a very soft launch. Star Taxi obviously is advertising it through their means. And you're going to see now, as December rolls out, more of a social media advertising through the library and through CMHA. So I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention in case there was questions where people wanted to know more, because I had dropped off posters to Paul at the arena. Because they're targeting obviously where the posters are going, where advertising is going, so that those in crisis will see who they can call and who they can access. So certainly if you know of anybody that has struggles, and as I mentioned earlier, of course, holidays don't help, and they just bring added stressors. Please feel free to pass along that information, and let them know that if they are in crisis, or if they know somebody in crisis, transportation will be provided, and there will be no charge to them. So, and I think that if as it goes on, they'll likely maybe be reaching out to Tina to possibly doing a more formal presentation to council as the program kind of escalates. So just wanted to update you on that. No changes to budget? Any notices of motion? All right, then we will move into the motions for the evening. Okay, so resolve that the Council of the Township of Lucan Biddulph receive the attached accounts as paid for information as follows. They were for November 2020 for $511,215.91. Can I get a mover and seconder for that, please? Councillor Westman and Councillor Reagan. And all opposed? And that's carried. Okay, so I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm hoping that you all read the resolution as presented, but it has to do with the changes to Ontario's Conservation Authority Act. And I'll just finish, I read off the bottom. And now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the Township of Lucan Biddulph is in support of the request from local Ontario conservation authorities that the province of Ontario repeal Schedule 6 of the Budget Measures Act, Bill 229, and that the municipal clerk and chief administrative officer be directed to submit correspondence to the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks regarding this request. Can I get a mover and seconder for that? Councillor Westman and Deputy Mayor. And all opposed? And that's carried. Resolved that the Council of the Township of Lucan Biddulph adopt the following human resources policy. Policy number 101-20-2021, the confidential salary grid. Can I get a mover and seconder for this, please? Councillor Regan. And a seconder. Councillor Mastarakis. All opposed? And that's carried. Resolved that the Council of the Township of Lucan Biddulph accepts the Treasurer's recommendation as presented in report number FIN-16-2020. A mover and seconder for that, please. Deputy Mayor and Councillor Regan. And all opposed? And that's carried. And again, I won't read the memo of understanding, but if I can get a mover and seconder for the agreed memo of understanding for emergency winter maintenance. Mover and seconder. Councillor Regan. The seconder, Councillor Mastarakis. And all opposed? And that's carried. Resolved that if no one cares to speak to these bylaws on their first, second, and third reading, that they be considered to have been read a first time and passed, read a second time and passed, read a third time and passed, and that they be numbered 58-2020, the face mask bylaw, 59-2020, the confirming bylaw, and 210-2020 ZBA Malbreck. The mover and seconder for that, please. Councillor Westman and Deputy Mayor Manders. And all opposed? And that's carried. And resolved, the council meeting be adjourned at 9:15 p.m. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Regan. Seconder. Councillor Mastarakis. All opposed? And we are adjourned. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays.